As you probably know, we always meet on the fourth Thursday. Well, comes November, after Thanksgiving is the fourth Thursday, and I don't think we want to be here Thanksgiving. So we're going to move the public meeting up to the 21st, which is 1 week before Thanksgiving. And we'll keep the work session the same, which will be the 19th. Tuesday the 19th and Thursday the 21st. The following month, December, we'll do the same thing. Our ordinary meeting would be the day after Christmas. Again, not a good day to have a meeting. So we'll move that up a week to the 19th. And we'll keep the work session on the 17th. So you got 19 and 21 November, 17 and 19 in December. That means, Charlie, that we won't have you for November?
Why?
Be the third Thursday.
Third Thursday.
Don't you always do the town?
Town and ZBA.
You slide us and you always do the town.
But I always adjourn you, you get your video.
Figure out a way.
We won't hold it against you.
It's not the same.
Now we have 4 decisions. First one being case number 2792, the Community Baptist Church, 111 Powell Avenue.
I move we accept this decision as proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would you like a copy?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have an extra.
Do you have one?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, December, he said December 19th.
On the application of case number 2790, Robert Holman, 5 Bishop Court.
I move we accept this decision as proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On the application of case number 2791, Kent Christian, 147 Willie Street.
I move we accept this decision as proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On the application of case number 2773, Lilamas LLC, 567 Oxpasture Road. This one needs a brief explanation from our environmental expert.
Yes, this was previously issued a permit for an inline float. When the applicant went to the trustees, they asked them to make it T-shaped or perpendicular to the end of the fixed pier. And so this is just to update the ZBA's permit with the town trustees' permit so they're consistent. Very minor change from the standpoint of this board, and that's before you for decision.
Need a motion?
I move we accept this decision as proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That takes us down to the pending cases on 550 and 554 Hill Street. That is still before the planning board, so we do nothing with that. Case number 2779, Coles Associates LLC, 477 Little Plains Road.
The applicant, John Bennett. You have a long calendar. I'll try to be brief. Essentially what I want to present... Excuse me?
Thank you.
I will. Essentially what I want to present to you, and I have a copy for the record and a copy for council. These are... well, this looks bulky, but it's just copies for everyone. What they are is appraisals of the property. You'll remember this is an application to separate a parcel which has been 2 tax maps for some time, and the applicant has paid real property taxes as 2 separate lots for, well, probably in excess of 40 years. The parcels, however, were kept in the same name, and under the code they merged. But I think we've demonstrated quite.
Could you just give us this, John?
Excuse me?
Could you just give us this?
Well, there are 3 appraisals, and what they are is the appraisals. I'll explain what they are, but I've been chastised for not having a copy for everybody. So what that is there's 3
Each
separate
copy weighs
documents.
about 50 pounds.
There's 3 separate documents there, and there's a copy for everyone.
Well, give me everyone
Well, I'll
first,
explain what
probably
they are.
want that.
You'll
In
explain.
any event, this is an area I think we've more than adequately demonstrated is
You ready for?
Is that all? Is that one set?
Yeah, that's 3 appraisals.
that's
You want mine, Dan, or you want to
That's
wait?
one
Wait
set
for the movie.
Of everything.
no, that's one set.
Take it apart. Go.
Yeah, this is what I'm doing. Let me explain them. That's one. Appraisal. Where's the
I
other?
have, I have
Well,
this
this whole set here, this goes for the file, I guess, right?
Nope.
No?
I want to give Rick one copy each, so that he has them. And then I'll let you guys figure it out on your own, because he's the guy who's making the decision. On this issue. I hope I have 3 separate appraisals for you there, Rick. Hold on a second. Yeah. Let me explain what I have here. Just let me give a little bit of background for your memory.
Files. Don't move.
There are these two lots have been separate tax lots for about 40 years, or ever since the tax map came out. I guess that was in the 70s. And they've been taxed as 2 separate parcels. They've merged. We want to separate them, and we need variances to do that, area variances. So we've asked for those area variances, but we've demonstrated, I think, very forcefully that the grant of relief here would be result in the creation of lots which are certainly no smaller than the lots in the neighborhood and larger than quite a few of the lots in the neighborhood. And indeed, there was relief granted on this same block in which the board acknowledged that lots of 2 acres were appropriate to the area. So what I have for you now is 3 separate appraisals. And what this demonstrates to you is the lots as 2 lots are worth $6,300,000 more than the lots as 1 lot. You have an appraisal for the lot as 1 lot, $14,400,000, and this is from Jim McLaughlin's firm. So he's very, very, probably is more aware than any appraiser of the Southampton village value. So $14,400,000 as the lot, as the 1 lot. The westerly lot, if it were to be granted the relief, Jim is appraised at $10,300,000. The easterly lot, Jim is appraised at $10,400,000. The existing improvements on the lot do not dramatically add to the value of the easterly lot. Thus, there's not that much difference in the value of the 2. But in any event, if you take the $10,300,000 for the proposed westerly lot and the $10,400,000 for the easterly lot, you come up with $20,700,000 as a value for 2 lots, as opposed to the $14,400,000 as a value as 1 lot. That is a significant difference by any standards, and even in the 21st century. That's a lot of money, $6,300,000. That's the loss of potential value. And what that is that's the benefit, really, that the applicant is seeking here. That's not the end of the story. The inquiry doesn't end there. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that it does end there. As a matter of fact, everybody knows, every well-versed land use lawyer knows what the case law is. The mere fact that you can make more money subdividing it into as subdivided as opposed to 1 lot isn't in and of itself doesn't constrain you to grant the relief. But what it does do is it sets up the benefit. And what it also does, and this is what the law says, that then has to be weighed against the detriment. You say, is there any detriment that would outweigh a loss of $6,300,000 on this parcel? And I submit to you that there is no detriment. There's no detriment to the neighborhood because we're creating lots that are as large as the average lot in the neighborhood. That's a misstatement. They're larger than many of the lots in the neighborhood, both east, west, and within that block that I showed you on the tax map. So there's no detriment to the neighborhood. There's no detriment to the neighbors. Mr. Harris has been kind enough to submit Mr. and Mrs. Harris have been kind enough to submit a letter of support for this application. The only condition that they wanted was that there would only be one curb cut on Gin Lane, because there's a very nice uninterrupted flow of very large mature privet on the side of that side of Gin, and you could potentially, because of the width, have 4 curb cuts, 2 circular driveways. We'd agreed there'd only be one, because there's one. You have one entrance on Little Plains and one on Gin Lane. And as I suggested at the last meeting, that in and of itself is a substantial concession, because people, from a value point of view, want a Gin Lane address as opposed to a Little Plains address. Although, it's just one of those intangibles. I think Little Plains is a lovely street, and I'd consider myself lucky if I lived there. But in any event, so that's what you have. You have this very significant potential loss in value, $6,300,000, and that's the benefit. The benefit is we don't want to experience that loss, and you just go through the weighing situation that you always have, which the code says you do, and you weigh that against any detriment. And I would suggest that there's none's been proven, none has been suggested. As a matter of fact, we've proven that there is no detriment to the neighborhood, the health and safety, and welfare of the community. These would more than easily be. As a matter of fact, the health department didn't even require a subdivision review on this, because there are lots on the 1981 tax map. I think that's all I have to say. And thank you for your time.
And over the years, they've been taxed as separate properties. Is
Yes.
that correct? So if that were not the case, your argument would be under some strain, I guess.
No.
In other words, if you saved money all those years by having one lot, it wouldn't be quite nice, I think, to come around and say, we want 2 lots.
Well, there's some case law that I pointed out in my memorandum of law that that doesn't suggest, it says that's a very significant factor. I don't think an applicant would be. I think an applicant would still have a very strong case, but the fact that it's been taxed as 2 separate lots certainly aids the case. I think it's under your code they've probably merged because they're in the same name, and they were used in conjunction. The swimming pool was on one side, so I don't want to argue that case, because I think everybody knows what the law is. But that doesn't prohibit me from at all coming in and saying that these lots should be allowed to be recreated and conform to all the neighborhood. Look at this, 1.9, 1.9, 1.5, 1.6, 1 acre, another 1 acre lot, 2 1 acre lots. So I'm not doing any violence to the neighborhood here. And again, if people were up in arms, and I shouldn't. I continually check the file. I didn't see any additional correspondence. The only correspondence I have is a letter of support from the neighbor, and that the courts have said that that's indication that there is no damage to the neighborhood. So
Even subdivided, the 2 lots are larger than most of the lots in that square, aren't they?
even subdivided, the 2 lots are larger than the lots in the square. It's the biggest lot in the square by far. But look at these right here: 1 acre, 1 acre. 1.6, 1.5, 1.1, 1.6. And again, I think I read a case that the board found that it was about 15 years ago, but no circumstances have changed. And I think that the very fair reasoning in that case that led you, it's in the materials that led you to grant the relief up there. I believe it's these 2 lots up here, the flag off of Foster. This tax lot. 25.1 and 25.2. The reasoning that led you to allow the creation of these 2 acre lots from a 4 acre parcel is still there and still intact. But I won't belabor the point. I think you have my argument, and unless you have any questions or Rick has any questions, I'll just rest.
Rick, did you have anything?
I've reviewed all the written materials that John submitted at last month's hearing, and I have no further questions.
Is there anyone out in the audience who'd like to refer to this application? No.
Well, I'll leave it to you guys then.
Want to hold it for decision?
Yes.
So
Thanks.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Just be aware that our next work due to the November schedule, our next work session is November 19, and the meeting is November 21. I'm not necessarily going to have time between Tuesday night the 19th, and Thursday, the 21st, to prepare a decision.
It's been, they've been, I don't think there's any great rush in terms of
I'm
this
just
application.
alerting
but I
you to
appreciate
that
it.
fact.
Thank you.
In the application of case number 2782, 1280 Meadow Lane, LLC, 1280 Meadow Lane.
Good evening, Lisa Poyer on behalf of the applicant. This property, as you may recall from a couple months ago, is the boathouse property. The boathouse was on the property since prior to 1933. It's considered a local icon, and during Superstorm Sandy, it was damaged and is now lying next to the pilings in a giant pile. The current homeowners own this property as well as the property across the street, which is formerly the Kulakundis lot. They purchased the lot. At that time, they were looking to reconstruct the boathouse. They wanted to keep the historic nature of it. They wanted to keep the iconic look of it. Now they're going to have to completely rebuild the boathouse if you allow it and the other agencies. But they want to keep with the historic nature that the property has always maintained. During the last hearing, your environmental consultant had asked for a few items, and I believe we have submitted the items to the board and supplied it to Mr. Voorhees. I don't believe he's had time to review everything, so we'll just kind of run through those items. He had asked for tidal stage soundings. That's been noted on this survey by Squires and Holden. The mean high water is at elevation 2, and the mean low water is at elevation negative 0.79 as referenced to NAVD 1988. You wanted to confirm that dredging is not proposed for the project. At this time, no dredging is proposed within either the boathouse or any kind of a dug channel out to deeper water. Homeowners are looking to use it for small boat vessels and kayaks, so they don't need deep water. They understand that at high tide there's not much water there. Mr. Voorhees had asked to provide details regarding the construction of the bulkhead and the boathouse. We had plans that were prepared by Southampton Engineering. They showed the piling details, the bulkhead details, as well as construction methodologies with regards to internal bracing and other framing details in here. Page 2. So these have just been submitted for your review. It was asked to provide construction methodology for the catwalk. An Army Corps set of plans were submitted that were prepared by InterScience, which details those items. Indicate the upland staging area for barge and supporting vessels. InterScience has prepared a Meadow Lane Boathouse construction methodology plan, which goes through these items here. Basically, number one is the existing boathouse debris will be removed to appropriate upland sites. A barge will come in here, remove the larger debris. It will go onto the barge. It will then be carried across to either the trustee ramp on Little Neck Road or to Jackson's Marina, whichever location works out best for usage. Any of the smaller debris will just be removed by hand. The proposed 4-foot wide catwalk, the pilings will be installed first. It's going to be 4 feet wide, but in order to facilitate construction activities, they'd like to put a 6-foot wide piece of plywood or some kind of a construction ramp on top. That way they can get some larger materials down there as they need it. And this will also limit the construction activity, walking, to the catwalk, and it'll help define the areas. A row of silt fencing will be installed on either side of this access easement, and the road is in place, it's usable, so that will also help limit any debris, vehicle activities. One small truck will be used to transport people as well as construction equipment that may be necessary each day, from the site across the street to the main house property. There's ample parking on that lot. There's more than enough area to do construction staging without having to clear on that lot. It's a large parking court. Everything will be constructed within kind of a floating boom. We're going to put a boom around this area. That way, in case any floating debris happens to escape, it'll be contained. They'll go out there and take care of it and collect it. A small barge will be used, which will be launched either at the Little Neck ramp or at Jackson's Marina, which will be used to bring panels of materials. They're looking to construct it off-site, put it on the barge, and then bring it in and construct it. The pilings will be driven from the small barge, and it'll be pretty much built from the inside out. You're going to move around within the boat basin mostly. The small barge will be limited along the outside area as necessary to put construction. All of the materials will be untreated. The bulkhead will consist of steel and/or wood, which will match what exists today, what existed when it was installed. Mr. Voorhees had asked for the construction methodology showing the barge placement, material placement, etc. That's once again shown on this plan. He had asked that the catwalk be constructed of an open grate material. We've proposed that it will be. It'll be some kind of a through flow material which will allow light to penetrate. The catwalk will only be constructed about a foot off the water. Very, very low. We don't want it to impact the views from either Meadow Lane or from boaters that are used to looking at just the boathouse. However, we do need to provide access for the owners to get to the boathouse. So we've therefore proposed a low-profile catwalk, no railings. The only railing that's proposed is right around the doorway, which is elevated up, and it's for safety measures so someone doesn't fall. Mr. Voorhees has asked for the floor joist bottom elevation of the structure. Squires and Holden originally located the top of the beam of the original boathouse at elevation 4.95. We're proposing it at elevation 5, so it's pretty similar. On top of that will be about a foot of joists and decking, so that'll take it at an elevation of 6. And then from there up will be the main house of the boathouse, and that'll be about 17.8 feet, which will put you up at around 24 feet in elevation for the peak, which meets what was originally there. The boathouse is located in the FEMA zone of VE elevation 12. However, we're not proposing any habitable space. It's just going to be used solely for the storage of equipment, for boating supplies. They're going to have one single water line, which will be directional drilled down the road. Once it gets to the catwalk, it'll come out of the ground, follow underneath the catwalk, and then every year in the wintertime it'll be blown out and winterized. Same thing with the electric. So the utilities will be minimal, and we hope you're here to answer any questions.
In the methodology?
Yes.
Anytime there's a construction project, there's quite a bit of debris, cardboard boxes, banding,
Right.
wood scraps, which we really don't want to blow into the wetlands or go floating off in a high tide. Can that be added to the police and clean that job site up and remove every day that that any debris or building,
Correct. Yeah, we can agree to that. We'll have.
I think she indicated they would have a boom around the construction area
But
in the
that,
water side.
it's
But-
windy
And then
there.
someone can
It's,
walk-
you got high tides. If they, it just a lot of I know a construction site stuff.
Right.
Just
Yep.
A lot of the unpacking will be occurring on the property across the street, but any other debris that may float or be windblown beyond the boom will be collected. We can agree to collect it daily, by hand, obviously.
I think you're asking for the site to be cleaned daily, just so
Right.
that
Right, we can.
Yeah,
we can
none of that
do
stuff can, then, if they do a weekly and you get, it's so out in the wind and out in the open, you get
Right,
an
then it's-
ex-normal high tide, it can float away before you, or blow away before it's,
We can agree to that.
that's it. That's all I have.
Rob,
Nope.
Rick,
No questions?
anything else?
Just a couple of minor things. First of all, very complete resubmission based on the last comments. The only place that I noticed the through-flow decking was on that construction management plan, methodology plan.
Okay.
I didn't see it on any of the other plans, so
We can have it added to the other plans.
I was glad to
It's
hear
an easy-
that
Yeah,
it's proposed, but it's really just in a note
okay.
on that plan. And then note number 1 talks about replanting an area with Spartina
Correct.
alpiniflora.
Yes.
What area is that? Is that just where you
That
remove
is-
debris?
That is the actual area. The roof didn't fall straight on top. The roof fell
Yeah,
offside.
kinda tilted over,
So when
yeah.
we remove that debris, if there's any upland area that needs to be replanted or revegetated, we'll do that as well.
Okay. I see the note on here. I think we'll just make a special note in
Okay.
special
That's fine.
conditions. And then I think we had asked about the status with other agencies.
It was submitted to the DEC. They requested a lot of the same information, and it will be resubmitted back to them, and we'll receive their comments. We have not submitted yet to the trustees.
Okay.
We're kind of waiting for the election to finish up.
Are there any FEMA elevation requirements that pertain to the building?
No, it's non-habitable. FEMA allows a garage, storage area, and an entryway into main living house. Since this is also an accessory structure, and it's over
Doesn't
water, it doesn't really apply.
And then has the building department reviewed the plan? Will
Not
they
yet.
be issuing a permit on this as well?
Hopefully they will be. They haven't received it yet or reviewed it.
Okay.
And I have Chuck Gios here from Rambo, if you have any other questions for him regarding the construction details of it, how it's going to actually be implemented.
I was pretty satisfied with the plans. I did just really get to look at them in detail tonight, but the explanation was helpful. So, other than those minor comments, it's pretty much set to go on my end.
Is enough water in there to get a barge in and out of there?
Well, they talk about a shallow barge, but maybe the
Maybe,
representative from
Mr.
Rambo
Gios?
could explain.
It would be a very shallow barge.
Can you come up, Chuck, so he can hear you? And see you on the television?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. I think you mentioned about the flow-through grading.
Yes.
That is shown here, if that,
Oh, it is on the
yeah, it's
construction
on
plan.
this
Okay.
one, yeah.
That may be enough. I'll reference all plans and maybe I'll put a
Okay.
special condition on that as well.
Right. And it is shallow in there at low water. I'm sure will be a ground on the ground in the boathouse. And all the work will be done from that, inside that boathouse. Once we have the access walkway, that of course will not, but we're all gonna be inside the existing piles that are there, pretty much.
So you can float your equipment in at high tide, shouldn't be a problem?
Yeah,
Okay.
we may have some problems getting out when we want to, or in further but that's what we have to work around. And I think the presentation was very complete too, so.
Anyone out in the audience would like to be heard of this application? No? Therefore,
Then we can adjourn it for decision.
very good.
So moved.
All in favor?
Okay.
You should be aware that the work session is only, so it won't necessarily be ready for the November meeting, but you have other agencies to get through anyhow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you see Andy Pafko died?
No, did he really?
He was the guy that watched.
He was the one
Bobby
who watched the
Thompson.
Bobby Thompson home run,
Yeah,
yeah.
last week. Who was it?
I think he died years ago.
Andy Pafko.
After, played left field for the Dodgers, when Thompson hit the home run.
Comes to mind because Broncos, but man.
got his house up for sale here.
I see.
1.8.
Oh, that's a steal. Take two.
On the application, case number 2783, James Branca, 248 White Street.
No kidding, 1.8. I'm rich.
The applicant, Robert Marcinsick, O'Shea Marcinsick and Bruin, 250 North Sea Road, Southampton. Good evening. The subject property is located on the south side of White Street between Halsey Street and Breeze Lane. It's comprised of approximately 13,500 square feet and is located in an R12.5 zoning district, therefore it's a conforming lot. If this board may recall, when we were last here, during the last meeting, there was some question as to whether or not the affidavit of posting and mailing had been submitted prior to the hearing. Since I hadn't been retained, I should say, been retained right before that. I was told that it was submitted. The board didn't have a file, so there was some question as to whether or not it had been, so we put it over until today. Essentially, the affidavits have been submitted, and this board does have jurisdiction, so we're ready to move forward. As I had briefly mentioned at the last meeting, the request is to construct an approximate 4-foot by 15-foot addition onto the front of an existing one-car garage, which is located 11.1 feet from the side yard boundary, where 15 feet is required in the R12.5 zoning district, and also a request for a total side yard of 24.6, where 40 is required under the code. I had submitted into the record as part of the application at the last meeting a survey showing where that there's a bunch of improvements going on to the property. The only one that the only one that we do need a variance for is the garage, not for the covered porch nor for the addition. The reason that we need that variance is to construct a laundry room, essentially in the area of the garage. To the rear of the garage. Since the 4-foot portion of the rear of the garage is proposed to be converted into a laundry room, the applicant is proposing to add 4 feet to the front of the garage so that it may still accommodate a car. Basically what we're doing is moving the garage 4 feet towards White Street and putting in a laundry room in between the existing kitchen and the garage. The applicant needs a laundry room because currently he has a small under-counter washer and dryer in his kitchen, which is shown by this photograph, which I'll put into the record. It really doesn't have any residential utility. It's very small. The applicant has no basement in the house. He only has a small mechanical room, which houses the hot water heater and the furnace. The layout of the house, I would submit, does not allow for the addition to be put in any other location. As part of your application, you do have building plans. What I'd like to do is submit, just for purposes of discussion here, a portion of those building plans, which is essentially the floor plan of the first floor of the house. There's only one-story house. What those building plans show is that the only conforming location to put a laundry room other than where it's proposed is to the rear of the house, which would be in the area of the dining room or living room. So essentially you'd have a living room, a laundry room off a living room or a dining room, or in the front of the house where it would be off an existing bedroom. Neither one of those are practical, so therefore we would submit that the only practical location for the laundry room is where it is currently being proposed. I would additionally submit that it's not going to bring about an undesirable change in the neighborhood. I have several photographs of the lots in that area along White Street, which show the existing side yards for the houses. Of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 houses along on the south side of White Street, which I will submit into the record, and I would submit that while I did not measure them, if you look at those photographs, you can, I think, see that several of them do not meet the 15-foot yard side yard setback, and many of them do not meet the 40-foot total yard setback. Therefore, essentially, there will be no change in the character of the neighborhood. Essentially, what you have here is a bunch of 75-foot wide narrow lots. They already have non-conforming side yard setbacks, and any addition to the either side of the property, either side of the dwelling requires a variance. We are not increasing the degree of nonconformity by going closer to the property line. We're only going closer to the street. We do not require a variance. Front yard variance will be within the setback for the front yard.
The only reason that you're here is because the house as it now stands does not meet the setbacks.
That's correct. That's correct. But even if we go, no, actually, I'm talking about the front yard setback. The front yard
I'm
setback,
talking about the side yard.
side yard does not meet the current setback. That's correct. That's correct.
And this will not decrease that in any way.
No, not whatsoever. Also, as far as screening is concerned, I will submit these photographs into the record. This is a photograph of the hedges which screen the garage from the view of the adjacent neighbor to the east. This is again a similar photograph of all of the existing screening now that separate the subject property from the neighbor to the east. Photograph of privet hedge that blocks the garage from the view of passers-by along White Street. And lastly, I actually have a letter from Charles Scourin, who is the homeowner to the adjacent property immediately to the east of the subject property. The property is most affected by this variance request right next to the garage, indicating that he has no objection to the application, requests the Zoning Board of Appeals grant the variance. And I will submit that into the record as well.
He's moved the curb cut, is what he's doing, right?
Yes, that's correct. I have nothing further unless the board has any questions. I'll try and answer them as to the best of my abilities.
Anything, Rob?
No.
Dan? No. Rick?
Any questions?
Anybody out in the audience like to hear this application? Want to do the same thing, or?
If you want it, this is simple enough. If you want to,
Fine,
if you guys want to do it now, we could do it.
fine.
Okay. This is an application for a minimum side yard variance to 11.1 feet and a total side yard variance to 24.6 feet in order to permit a proposed 4-foot by 14.9 foot addition to the existing detached garage, period.
It's an attached garage there, Rick.
Oh,
It's an attached
I'm sorry, did I
garage.
say detached?
I thought you
Okay.
said detached. I'm sorry.
Attached garage, yeah. Thank you for correcting that. The setback of the existing house is 11.1 feet from the easterly line, and the existing house has a total side yard setback of 24.6 feet, period. Thus, this application involves a minimal addition to the attached garage, which will be located no closer to the easterly line than the existing garage, period. Under these circumstances, we find that the requested variance is warranted, and we grant the requested variance.
I move we accept this decision as proposed.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Have a good night.
On the application of case number 2784, Gerard Rosengarten, 15 Pelham Street and 148 Moses Lane.
Yeah, I think we should
Planning board?
deny this one without prejudice. If it is going to be pursued, it first has to be pursued before the planning board, and if it were going to be pursued before us, it would need to be amended and re-advertised anyhow, And Jonathan Foster told us at the work session that the applicant did not intend to pursue this at this time.
Okay.
So I think we should deny it without prejudice.
I move we deny this case without prejudice.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Case number 2787, Milstein Properties, 304 Meadow Lane.
For the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton. This is a continuing application for a wetland special permit for certain activity at the Milstein property. And unlike most of the cases, when I start off, that's about all I'm going to say, because the information that was requested at the last meeting is really technical in nature. And I have Melissa Dedovich, the environmental consultant, and Ed Hollander, the landscape architect, to attempt to address the issues that were raised by your consultant at the last meeting. So that having been said, I'll turn the floor over to Melissa.
As you may recall, due to the fact that we didn't have files, none of us had the memo, so we were lucky enough the next day to get the memo from Mr. Voorhees about his questions about the project. One of the first things Mr. Voorhees had asked for is that we provide a plan that was larger in scale, so we now have a plan that's at 1:20 as opposed to 1:40. It also now clearly shows, I've added the highlighting, but it shows where the 125-foot landscape setback is, 150 structural, and 200 septic system setback from the wetlands, which I will remind you are across Meadow Lane. So you have a paved road in between actually our site and the wetlands associated with Alderneck Pond. One of the other things we were asked for was to provide driveway drainage, which now is shown on the plan by Squires and Holden. We also were asked to look at reducing the retaining walls. Originally, we had 440 linear feet of retaining walls within the 125-foot setback. This has been reduced now to 205 linear feet. The disturbance, area disturbance, we've had calculated, it's going to be 57,145 square feet. Accordingly, we will be preparing or having actually an engineer prepare a SWPPP as required to be submitted to both the village and the New York State DEC. We were also asked to investigate whether or not we could reduce the fill, particularly in the 125-foot jurisdiction. What we were able to do is a couple things. Number one, there's a berm right here, an existing berm. As part of this plan, this berm is being removed and pulled back, so we're pulling that fill back out. Also, the tennis court, I think you might remember this, Mr. Guzowitz, we were talking about sunken versus regular. Right now, it's a pre-existing tennis court that is at grade, and we are required to bring in fill to both bring the house into FEMA conformance as well as to bring the septic system into health department conformance. So we were going back about the elevation being at 6 and everything. We were actually able to raise the elevation to 8, and by doing so, we're reducing the fill not only in the 125-foot jurisdiction, but also the total fill that's going to be brought to the site. Before we get to the planting plan, one of the other things that I'd like to have Mr. Hollander actually address is, as you may remember that there's a property right here, the Rowan property. I'm not sure if it's still marked Rowan, but it's 322 Meadow Lane. There was a similar wetland special permit issued for this site in 2006. And these were the setbacks associated with this, and I can submit a copy to the file. As you can see, this is also very similar, where they were going to take the existing house, demolish it, put a new house, and put septic system in here, and also they had to get some a wetland special permit from this board. What's interesting is that they actually stopped here and put retaining walls, whereas we're going to be trying to do part of a dune restoration as part of this project too, which is why we have a little more fill than this project. This project had a total fill of 2,500 cubic yards. That, who is that?
He's got to bring the milk home. I'm out.
Melissa, what was that case?
Not my wife.
Oh, it
Is
is?
that your wife?
Whoever it is, goodbye.
That was, it's case number 322. Excuse me, 2479.
And the address?
The address is 322 Meadow Lane, the Rowan residence. And I've gotten the information on the fill from the project narrative that was attached to it. And what's interesting also is that this project was approved before the FEMA flood maps were changed in this area. This house had to be brought up to VE elevation 10. They had a first floor elevation of 17, so they actually went higher than necessary. Ours is at a VE elevation 17, which it's actually to the first floor, first horizontal structure, so your first floor is 20. We're going for a first floor elevation of 23. But if you look at the cross-section associated with the septic system, and you would see that really the need for the fill is both for FEMA as well as for septic. There were also some questions regarding the planting plan. I believe, Mr. Voorhees, you can correct me, we've removed all of the plants that you asked us to remove from the site. I think there was a question about two species, the crepe myrtle and a little bit of privet, which, did I give you the landscape? No, here it is. We're looking this up too. Let's just show what we're talking about. Presently, the area we're talking about, this on the existing site consists of overgrown ornamentals, some Russian olive, and some lawn area. What Mr. Hollander is now proposing is pretty much all natives with the exception of this line of crepe myrtle and privet. And actually, I'll let you continue.
In response to Mr. Voorhees' memo regarding some of the plants that were there, what we basically tried to do was to eliminate as many of the non-natives as we possibly can. The only plants left, and so the entire area that's currently disturbed or horticulturally maintained all along Meadow Lane has now got to be planted back into native beach grass and American holly and bayberry and cedar, including the trees that we'll be using to screen the tennis court as required by the planning board. We're going to replace all the current bluegrass lawn areas on the site with a fescue sod so that we're going to be able to greatly reduce the amount of irrigation and fertilizer that would be required for that. We're reducing the amount of grass, period, within the area, and we're going to take out all the existing bluegrass and go to a fescue. A couple plants that we have on there that are not native are plants that are incredibly well adapted to growing in this particular environment. Where frequently in the past we would have used native Amelanchier, what we found is that Amelanchier at this point requires a great deal of fungicides, pesticides, insecticides, probably because of the fact that there are a lot more cedar trees around right now. All the old farm fields have gone into old fields. Old fields have red cedars that grow. Red cedars are an alternate host for a pest called cedar shad rust. Same things that apple trees get and things like that. And so the shads have had a much more difficult time growing well, and they require a lot of care. I would bet that climate change has something to do with this as well, but that's beyond my pay grade to figure that much out. But what I do know is that shads take a lot of care and a lot of work, where crepe myrtles are incredibly salt tolerant, require no fertilizer, no irrigation once they get established. They love growing down in the salt air down there. So it's a great plant to use. Privet is obviously used all along Meadow Lane, is very easy to use. We just have a little bit of it immediately adjacent. The gates that are there, there's privet on the adjoining properties, and I don't think it's going to require much care. And so what we've tried to do is to develop a planting plan that is uniquely well adapted to this site in requiring as little fertilizer, irrigation, or chemicals as possible to preserve the integrity of the adjacent wetlands.
Does fescue sod require irrigation or fertilization at all?
I think, any new plant when it goes down is going to require some irrigation until it gets established. But once it gets established, the nice thing about it is, A, you mow it a lot. What I try and encourage clients to think of, the less you water it, the less you have to mow it, the less you have to mow it, the less it costs. That's usually a very effective strategy to reduce that. So the nice thing about it is you can really cut that down depending on weather conditions to almost, to maybe once a month irrigation, once every couple weeks, depending on weather conditions. But it's much, much more tolerant than the straight bluegrass lawns.
I think we recognize that the area is being improved from the standpoint of the existing invasives.
where the retaining wall is on the, I guess that would be the west side of the covering it. Is that better? West side of the property, you have three different rows with
Yeah.
three different plantings.
Yeah.
It looks like, what, it goes up about 2.5 feet for each lift? Is that what it is?
I think the walls, you know, the first wall is 4 feet off the property line, because Mr. Foster always
And
likes
then
us to do that.
And how high?
And then they step up a vary between 3. Nothing gets more than, some are 2.5 feet, and at one end, they get to about 3 feet. But it's a 2.5 or 3 foot jump up, and each one, we've got bayberry planted all through there and red cedar, so that it will be screened from the neighbors, but it'll all be planted with native plants.
And how, is that gonna be just naturally watered, or do you have to put irrigation in for
Well,
that?
you know, for all new plants, whether, you know, bayberry will grow in the sand dunes, but when you first transplant it, it's gonna need some drip irrigation for the first year or two until it gets itself established.
Basically, you'll have drip irrigation in there.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
What is that We're not gonna see it anyway, it's gonna be planted out pretty
It's all
much.
gonna get planted out, yeah. You won't see it.
Anything else? Bill? Rick, you ready?
No questions?
Dick, you anything else?
I think that the response that we received is very responsive to the prior memo. The memo was almost 2 pages, so I would just like to review this a little further. But it may be that everything is in order. I don't see anything that jumps out at me. If you want to, I don't know what the proper method would be, but I would hope to have a decision ready for the next meeting. I don't know if it needs to be closed or...
Be adjourned, and then if we have a decision, we have it, right?
I'm sorry, have you asked for more information? or-
No, I think that everything that we received is responsive to the requests from the last meeting, but there's a lot of information. So we want to have a little time to go through it
Yeah, we
with the
can,
intent that if everything is in order, we could have a decision for the next meeting.
we can adjourn it for decision, and if there's additional information you need, we can always reopen it.
Okay.
I move we adjourn
Oh,
for
wait a minute.
just.
I gotta see if anybody out in the audience would like to hear this application. No?
I move we adjourn for decision.
Again, because the regular
I'll
meeting
second.
is only 2 days
All in
after the
favor?
work session.
Aye.
Decision might not be until December anyway.
So if you have any questions, please ask them quickly. Thank you. You're welcome.
On the application of case number 2788, Beach Development, 54 Lee Avenue.
Anthony Trezza on behalf of the applicant. We pretty much covered everything in the last meeting. If you recall, this is 54 Lee Avenue. This was a property that previously had been denied variances without prejudice. Previously, that had been asking for a number of variances, including setbacks, for floor area ratio, for fill, for height. We came in with a new plan. I was involved in the first project. And the only variances that we require are a front yard and a rear yard for the principal structure. And if you recall, I had submitted previously information from John Foster, who did a building envelope analysis and had indicated that this property didn't have an adequate building envelope that would necessitate the need to get variances. And so there's really no new information that I have for the board. I had been talking to Mr. DePietris, because we talked about getting a decision, and he asked me for some additional information pertaining to the legality of the lot. He had seen on the old 1980 or 1981 tax map that there previously This property was part of another property, but I believe information was submitted indicating that the property was in fact subdivided many, many years ago. So I think all the information that was requested was submitted. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That's correct. I told Mr. Trezor earlier this week that it looked to me like this lot would have needed a lot area variance. And although one was probably granted years ago, somebody needed to get it to us. And today, Diane at the Building Zoning Department faxed over to me a copy of a lot area variance that was granted a long time ago. So that answers my questions. I have no further questions. I see in our packet tonight something from, I guess, some neighbors. Do you guys have that in your packet too? I haven't seen this before tonight.
I haven't seen it either.
Maybe they're here. Let's.
That's something from the owners of 686 Hill Street.
Yes. It's not dated, so I don't know when it was filed with.
There's no date on it.
Building Department, but maybe we should find out if they're here because they were.
I'm just trying to see what their.
Yeah.
They claim they have not received any mailed notice.
During the hearing opening, I had submitted all of the certified mailings that were required per the list that the village gave us, and it was determined we had jurisdiction, so all the notices went out to the appropriate parties.
They claim that between the last meeting and today, they will attempt to speak with the architect and with the builder. Have you heard from these people?
I heard from one property owner earlier in the week that I did speak to who said he didn't have any objections to the variances. He wanted to confirm that we weren't asking for any other variances, like the first go-around, height, the size of the building, fill, and that was what I conveyed to him. But other than that, I haven't heard anything else from any other neighbors.
This is quite a long letter. They say they have no objection to the requested variances, but if they don't get a chance to speak with you, they want the case adjourned so they can come before us. Now, are these people here, by any chance? James Sanders and Kerry E. Connolly? No.
Who did you speak to?
Should we
What was
be bound by
the fellow, the first name that you?
James Sanders.
Yep, that's the fellow I spoke to.
Did you speak to him?
Yes.
So he hasn't made contact with you?
Yeah.
He says if he makes contact with you, he has no objections.
Yeah, no, I spoke to Mr. Sanders earlier in the week.
Okay.
And he said that he did not have any objections.
No, the discussion I had was that he was confirming, he objected the first zoning board application because given the nature of the variances, including at that time, they were proposing a full basement and a huge amount of fill that all required variances. So he was confirming that we weren't asking for any other variances, including the size of the structure and the fill, and I conveyed to him that we were requesting the setback variances, and that's it.
I don't see anything else in the file. Is that the only thing you saw? Just the one letter?
Yep. Okay, this is.
Where would 668 be? That'd be to the east on Hill Street? The east of the Knight property?
It's,
you know where 660 is?
To the east of the Knight property.
it's here. It's not anywhere near 54 Lee Street. Lee
I
Avenue.
thought a corner of it might,
Well, no, there's not. 668.
yeah.
It's over here. His property's over here. It's 2 properties away at best.
They claim they're the ones who are most affected.
Well,
Okay.
maybe emotionally.
Okay, this afternoon after, I know we had talked about this at the work session, that we were ready to proceed if the lot
686,
area
I'm sorry.
variance
Oh,
information was gotten to us.
Well, they're there.
When it came in this afternoon, I did prepare a very simple decision, if you want to act on it.
With this application.
Yeah, did we ask if there's anybody else
I'm gonna do that now.
to be heard?
Anybody out in the audience would like to hear of this application?
Okay, if you want to do that decision, you can.
This here is a decision. Oh. Okay, I move we accept this decision on Beach Street as proposed.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Rick, you're on the ball.
Well, with a long agenda and knowing that we were going to be changing our November schedule, I figured let's dispose of whatever we can.
On the application, case number 2789, Johnson, 1970 Meadow Lane.
The applicant Gilbert G. Flanagan,
Claude and
21
Harriet Johnson.
South Main Street, Southampton. This is a wetland special permit case that was presented at the last meeting, and there was a relatively short memo from Mr. Voorhees, which we received the day after the meeting, and I believe we responded to his questions for additional information by a submission I made on October 15th. For example, he wanted the map to be clearly labeled as proposed as well as final survey, and that note has been changed. And we've also clearly indicated on the map the various wetlands jurisdictions imposed by the village. And we've added a note to the survey showing exactly what is existing and what is proposed. And you may remember this is a relatively minor application involving enclosing a portion of the existing house between an upper and a lower deck with no disturbance to the ground whatsoever. So I would think that we've provided the requested information. If you have any more questions, or Mr. Voorhees does, I'd be happy to try to answer.
I have no issues.
Dan?
Nope.
Rick?
No questions?
Chick?
No questions, that answers everything.
Anybody out in the audience like to hear of this application?
Well, we can adjourn it for decision.
I move we adjourn for decision.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna keep moving, you know.
I wander off.
Yeah. Welcome back.
That brings us down to the new cases, the first one of which is 2793, Marcia Rickless, 700 Meadow Lane.
No more wetlands, I'm gonna see you next month.
We have one at the very end. It's called a walk-on.
They never make it easy.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, Chick. What's that?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Billy Hajak. I work with Landmarks Environmental Site Assessments. Our offices are located at 530 Montauk Highway in Amagansett. And I'm here this evening representing the application of 700 Meadow Lane, which is the property of Marcia Rickless. With me this evening are the designers for the project, which is AML Architecture, and it's Kirk Lehman and Fluvio Masi. The property is located in the R80 zoning district. It is 6.2 acres, or just over 270,000 square feet. It's improved with a single-family residence constructed prior to the adoption of zoning. There are some accessory structures, including patios, walkways, swimming pool, a detached garage. The residence sits at the southerly portion of the property, nearest to the dune crest. and it's actually non-conforming with regard to the 100-foot dune crest setback. The proposal before you is to construct a 396-square-foot shed that would be used to house the existing swimming pool equipment and also store bicycles and other items. A variance is required from section 116(9)(a)(3) to locate the shed within the front yard.
Not the required front yard, though, right?
I'm sorry?
It's in the front yard,
It's in the front
not
yard.
the required front yard.
That's right, the front yard area. Situating an accessory structure in a conforming location, which would be the rear yard, requires placing the shed on the water side of the existing residence. This would be in violation of the 100-foot dune crest setback requirement, and also places the shed in an area containing both dunes and beach vegetation, and also in a FEMA velocity zone. The shed is proposed in a flood zone X, even though there are no special flood zone requirements for an accessory structure such as this, but it still is proposed in a zone X. The shed has been designed to comply with the dune crest setbacks on the property and the wetland setbacks. The shed is proposed 167 feet from the dune crest and well over 200 feet from wetlands. The shed complies with the principal structure setback requirements, and it's over 160 feet from our nearest neighbor, and that would be to the east. The site is well below permitted coverage, so the shed doesn't change much. And it's proposed 224 feet from the front property line and about 240 feet from the actual road improvements associated with Meadow Lane. There's a significant amount of native and ornamental vegetation between the proposed shed and Meadow Lane. The vegetation varies in height and texture, and it's a mixture of deciduous and evergreen plant species. The proposed shed is relatively small in size, and it's only proposed to be 14 feet in height. And our feeling, and we believe that it will not be visible from Meadow Lane. We've designed this to be multifunctional. It will incorporate the existing swimming pool equipment and allows for storage of bicycles and other items. The existing concrete slab that the pool equipment sits on will be incorporated into the construction of the new shed. And I have some photographs that I can give to the board. Some are taken from the property. Some are taken from Meadow Lane. As you can see on this board that we posted, shows the elevation of the shed, views of the property from Meadow Lane, and then the other 4 photographs are internal within the property. One shows a view. I'll let you two. There. So one photo shows a view of looking towards Meadow Lane in a northerly direction, and that's from the pool patio, which is a higher elevation than the shed is. It's about a change of grade of roughly 5 or 6 feet, so you're actually looking down at the area where the shed would be located. And as you can see in the distance, Meadow Lane is fairly invisible. There are other photographs in there showing the existing pool equipment and the slab, and also a view from the existing slab, standing on the slab, looking towards Meadow Lane to show how vegetated the property is. The area for construction is relatively flat, doesn't require any significant grading, and no native vegetation will be cleared. We believe that this is consistent with most of the development patterns along Meadow Lane, and I think the board has granted similar relief to this. If you have any specific questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Nope. Anything here? Rob, anything?
No.
Rick?
No questions?
Anybody out in the audience wish to read this application?
Good. This is an application for a front yard variance in order to permit a proposed shed in the front yard with a street setback of 224.9 feet, period. Although the proposed shed is located substantially further from the street than the minimum street setback requirement, it needs a variance because it would be located closer to the street than the existing house, and thus would be located in a front yard, period. In view of the location of the existing house, the minimal size and location of the proposed shed, and the location of other accessory structures on the subject parcel, and in view of the fact that this parcel is an oceanfront parcel, we find that the requested variance is consistent with our policy on oceanfront lots and is warranted, period. Therefore, we grant a front yard variance in order to permit the proposed shed with a setback of 224.9 feet from Meadow Lane.
I move we accept, what are we doing? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Accepting it as you read it.
Okay, I move we accept this decision as proposed.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sign now.
On the application of 2794 Old Town LLC, Old Town Lane, it says, I think it means Old Town Road in Wickapog. Sign application, I believe.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Keane, president of Old Town Development LLC. My firm recently took control of a project known as Old Town on the corner of Wickapog and Old Town. We are here this evening to ask for relief from your sign size. Due to the size of the property, which is approximately 50 acres, it's a very large development, and we ask to increase the size of the sign so that we can sell the homes in there. We have got here this evening the affidavit, all the mailings, as well as the affidavit of posting. Hand to you, I guess. I assume you've all received photos of the sign and all the necessary information, so to make it short, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
What would be the size of a permitted sign?
5 square feet, which is approximately 2 feet by 2.5. We're asking for, I believe it is 2.8 by 4.8, something like that. It's not that much on it.
It's over 8 square feet, in other words.
Yeah, I think it's closer to 10, but something like 9.6 or something, yeah.
Who knows, if bigger signs equal bigger sales, I guess it's fine.
Big piece of property.
Let's hope. Yeah, due to the size of the property, we kind of need some exposure.
Any questions, man? And
Are
just
these
one
the-
sign?
There are 3 different locations, because again, we have different roads. We have Old Town, the curve,
You've
and
got
then
like
we
3 signs then?
3 signs, correct.
And then once you're on the property, you're not gonna really have any more signs? These will be the signs?
I don't think so. If we do, we'll come back if it's necessary. Really, what we're trying to do is catch attention from outside the community on the main roads.
No neon.
No, that's not neon.
Not lighted at night with anything?
Rick?
One quick question to come back to, and then some other questions that we probably should start off with. The quick question is, well, we don't normally get applications for variances on the size limits of signs, so we have to be very careful, otherwise we could get a flood of applications. So you can come back to this, but you're going to have to at least address and tell us why a conforming size sign would not work. But let's come back to that. Other more substantial questions. Just from a preliminary look at this before the meeting. The as you are aware, you know, there are 10 building lots on this filed subdivision map. And then there's a parcel that consists of the open space or Meadow North, various areas that are not building lots.
Correct.
It looks to me like from your application that you are proposing to locate all 3 signs on that, call it Lot 11, that's what it's labeled on the subdivision map.
2 signs are on Lot 11, yes.
It looks to me like all 3 are. I don't see any.
Sign number 1 is the main entranceway on Wickapog.
Right, but that's all part of lot number 11.
Is it? Okay.
Lot number 11 includes the green,
Oh,
the
includes
common
all the
area,
common
the
area,
right-of-way,
yeah.
the
Yeah,
natural
yeah,
meadow,
so that's
north
right,
and
they would all
south.
be on 11, correct.
So you're not proposing to locate a construction sign on any of the building lots in which the homes are going to be constructed, but rather you're proposing to locate all 3 signs on one lot which is not a building lot. And you haven't asked for any variances relating to that. I don't know if you've discussed this with the building department.
No, I assume that,
But it looks to me like you need a variance in order to have 3 construction signs on, as you know, the code limit, as you probably know, the code limits a construction sign to 1 construction sign per lot. And you're proposing to locate 3 construction signs on 1 lot, and perhaps no construction signs on some other lots, which doesn't mean that you're proposing to have more than you would be allowed, but you haven't asked for a variance to have the signs where you propose, rather than a separate sign, a sign on each building lot. I recognize that this would result in less signs than the number of signs you could have, but if the board were going to grant this, they would, well, first of all, you got to ask for the variance, and it has to be advertised, and secondly, the board would probably, if they were going to grant it, would probably impose a condition that says no construction sign on specified building lots, so that you're not ending up with more than you could be allowed, if you follow me. So I'm not saying that there's no merit to the application, but what I'm saying is it looks to me like you need a variance that you haven't asked for. So you can always discuss that with the building inspector if you want to. I'm just telling you what I see from having looked at the application earlier tonight. So those are things that you're going to have to address.
Well, let me address the first question.
Well, let me finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Secondly, Lot 11 on the filed subdivision map, where you're proposing to put the signs, I'm reasonably sure that when this subdivision was approved by the planning board, that the planning board imposed covenants and restrictions relating to this lot.
Which lot was that? I'm sorry.
Lot 11.
Lot
Okay.
11, okay.
Lot number 11 on the filed map.
Right.
I'm sure that there were various covenants and restrictions imposed on that lot, but I don't know what I don't know that for a fact. I'm just sure there were, and I don't know what those covenants and restrictions might have been. So that the second question is there anything in the planning board covenants and restrictions that presents a problem with your application? We would have to know that. Again, if you had not talked about this with the building inspector, then maybe he went over this with you. That's what I was going to ask you, but I guess you haven't talked to him.
We did go to the building department and ask them to review our application and ask whether we were missing anything or whether they saw anything that was out of line, and the answer was no, everything looked fine. So, Doesn't mean that they were correct, doesn't mean that we,
Okay, well, you're going to have to provide us with a copy of the planning board covenants and restrictions, because if the planning board covenants and restrictions don't allow this, then you can't get this without planning board approval. And we don't have the power to override planning board conditions. So that's a second legal question that comes up.
and you're not aware of any CNRs, or you seem like you might be aware of something.
Oh, I don't handle the village planning board, but I do remember this, this subdivision when it got processed, and it would be beyond my comprehension if there were no covenants and restrictions imposed on this lot. I'm sure there are. I don't know that for a fact.
Okay.
But that's up to you to get them and provide them. So those are the two legal questions that exist. And then the only other question, other than why do you need a bigger sign than the code allows, would be, I don't know if you've shown these signs to the ARB. Or you were coming here first. I'm just asking.
When we were coming here, we were told that we had to come here first.
Okay? And the only question there would be, would you want the ARB to look at this before you act? That's up to you guys.
They usually handle signs, don't they?
Of the legal size, though. If
Yeah,
if
have
we
a legal
grant,
size,
if
yeah.
we granted a larger sign, they would still have to go to the
They'd still have to
ARB.
look at it.
They would still have to go to the
for approval of
ARB,
the
but
design
if-
of the sign, right?
I mean, I don't know whether the ARB would have any objections to the size of this sign.
So he needs us to either deny it and then go to the ARB, or to grant it and then go to the ARB.
Well, it's a question of whether do you want to get comments from the ARB before you act on the application, or whether you want to act first and then let the applicant go there. That's up to you.
However, look, back to the question I had, if you put these three signs on lot 11, and there's no restrictions, covenants that say you can't do it, then would you limit that to the 3 signs on the property, and then each building lot would not have any other kind of sign on it? So that we just don't have, how many building lots are in there?
10.
10 plus these 3 is 13, so, because then you're getting a larger sign.
I don't believe he owns all of the building lots.
Yeah,
That's what I don't know.
there's only 10 lots. There's not 13, there's only 10 building lots. The others are open space
Right.
lots. And the only signage that's up right now that currently exists are numbers on all the lots so that you can identify the lot.
Right.
The only other sign that I would see in the future would potentially be a construction entrance sign, so that the constructs don't come in the main entranceway.
And post a building permit or whatever. Okay.
And that doesn't have to be.
Well, I'm talking about construction signs. I mean,
Sorry?
in theory, if you have 6 building lots,
You can have 6 signs there. in theory.
that you could have 6 construction signs, 1 on each lot.
Right,
if
we
you're-
don't need to have the signs on the lots, we really need them on the main road.
Right, so we're gonna need to know which building lots you own, and whether you're willing to go along with a condition that says you can't have construction signs on certain of the lots, so long as these signs are up, or whatever. We're gonna have to tie it all together.
Okay, well, that's not a
Otherwise, we could act on this, and you could get the 3 signs, and then you could go and put up 6 more construction signs, if you follow me.
problem. Yeah, no, I understand.
Right, so we need to consider that. But more importantly, as I said, it looks to me like you're gonna have to amend your application to request a variance for 3 construction signs on lot 11.
Even though that's part of the homeowners association, which is owned by all the lots.
Okay, I don't know anything about the ownership.
Well, but it is a homeowners association, so therefore the lot 11 is owned by all of the lot owners. So in theory, it is 1 lot owned by 10 lots.
Yeah, but, okay, a construction sign is defined as, a contractor sign for construction on the lot where the sign is being erected. You're not proposing to put the sign on a lot where construction is going on. You're proposing to put it on a separate lot, which you're telling us is owned by the homeowners association rather than by you. I don't know anything about the ownership.
The homeowners association, all the lot owners own the homeowners association, which we also control. So we're asking to put it on a piece of property that we control for an entire community.
Right. Okay,
I understand what you're saying.
All I'm saying is, you haven't asked for a variance that would cover this.
Okay. I didn't think that was necessary. I'm not sure if I still agree that it's necessary, but I'm happy to do it.
I'm raising the issue. If you can convince the building department that it doesn't need that variance, or if you want to talk to the building inspector and have him call me.
Okay.
I'm seeing this for the first time tonight, and I have these questions, and we have not had a similar situation to this that I'm aware of.
It's sort of like an entry sign. In other words, you're putting it right at the road. Where
Right, I can understand. You want it along Wickapog Road and
Old Town.
and Old Town Road, because nobody's going to see the sign if it's on the internal building lots.
Well, you have a project that's, many, many, many years old with nothing done to it, and we're trying to stir up some interest in it.
I'm not questioning the merits of your application. I'm just pointing out some technical, legal requirements that need to be considered.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm also looking at my sheet. It says a 2-foot sign. It says meaning 1. So if you're changing things, it needs to say 3, unless that's just an error by the building department. It says a 2-foot, 8-foot 5.
I don't know if you
Who knows?
I don't have that here.
Should be taking 1.
I was confused.
We should informally pass this along
it?
to the
You
ARB.
see it?
See, I don't know what they mean by that.
Hey, well,
Informal opinion.
Well, that's what I was asking, whether you wanted to or
I
not.
really think we should.
I mean, if you do, then you should
Can we have John do that?
ask well, if you're going to get informal comments from the ARB, it's only fair if the applicant, has the opportunity to make a presentation to them before they give you comments.
Right.
So if you want comments, you could ask the applicant to go before the ARB and get their reaction. That's up to you.
but we're just going by size.
We're just going by size, but
So-
I don't think it would hurt to have what the ARB thinks.
Well, who cares? They're silly. Come on.
I don't care. I'm just raising the
So
question.
that-
I'm more interested in the covenant and restrictions, if there were any written in.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any covenant restrictions that I read
Well,
in doing it, but I can't say that it's not someplace in there, but
Oh, I can guarantee you.
I don't think there's anything on signs. There.
Oh, I'm not saying that there is.
Yeah, no.
But I can guarantee you,
Oh, it's got CNRs, but they're not on signs.
okay,
That's the
we need to know. We need to know what they are.
We
So
need to know that, yeah.
you need to provide us with a copy of the covenants and restrictions.
I
Is there any possibility of getting this subject to these various things, that we show you that there are no CNRs on the open land, that would restrict us from putting a sign up on it, and that we will go get the Architecture Review Board's approval before we proceed?
I don't have any trouble with the larger sign as long as it's those 3 signs and none on each piece of property. That's where you're sort of giving up something to get something else.
If you're going to show a design,
Make it particular to
wouldn't
that
you want the
site.
dimensions of the sign decided
Include
first?
It happening
If you're going to show a design to the ARB, isn't it determined by
As long
the
as
dimensions?
there's nothing.
Yeah, the sign would have to
So
change.
wouldn't you come here,
Yeah, we can
arguably,
improve
to get
the
the
looks of the
dimensions
sign,
down and
yeah.
then
But we're
work
getting
with the
something
design?
for giving up
No,
something,
we want to come here first to get the approval to do a larger sign so we can show them the
Yes.
size we'd like. Otherwise, we're going to show them.
Yes, you need to have the size before before they
It's the
mess
chicken
with
or
the
the egg.
design.
It's the size comes first.
So I'd say we go first.
All right. It's fine. But we still need to know what restrictions that the planning
Right,
board has
right.
on this particular
Mhm.
lot.
Right, and he needs to amend his application and re-advertise to request 3 construction signs on this lot. It seems to me, as I said, if you want to talk to Jonathan Foster about that and have him call me, go ahead, but it looks to me like that's what you need.
Again, I don't see it that way, but that's really John Foster's choice or the
Okay,
board's choice. You've got,
The code says that, one construction sign may be placed on a lot, subject to the following regulations, the size stuff it's set. So the code allows 1 construction sign on a lot. You're proposing 3 construction signs on a lot.
well, it is a different situation here because we have 10 lots, and yes, it is on the HOA lot, which is owned by 10 lots, so therefore, I think I could argue we have 10 approved, we could have 10 signs on the property. But, yeah.
I don't know how I can say it any clearer. I'm not saying that your proposal to have 3 construction signs on this lot rather than a separate sign on each of the other building lots. I'm not saying that that's not a reasonable proposal.
Okay.
But you need a variance to get it, because the code says you can only have 1 sign per lot.
Okay. Let me address the first question you had, which was why do we need a larger sign? And the answer to that is simple, that this is approximately 50 acres of property with multiple building parcels, and we are on 2 stretches of road that people travel at a decent rate of speed, and we're trying to catch attention, and with a 5 square foot sign, I think most people will drive by and not know what it said, or they'll be swerving towards it to read it, which could cause more problems. And so I think it's justifiable that maybe, I understand your concern that will you be opening the door to everybody looking for larger signs? I think there could be easily something that if you have a project of this size, that's different than somebody
Decision would
building
have
one
to
house
be
on one
written
parcel.
to make it unique.
I'm sorry?
The decision would have to be written to make this application
Right,
unique.
exactly. And I think we, you could easily do that. I mean, this is a large project for the village.
And you have more information that you're really required to present than a typical single lot.
Yes, it's.
You're trying to convey that this is a project with 4-acre lots.
Right, because most people have looked at this vacant for many, many years, and I don't know if they realize that we're actually starting this project up, and it's what is it going to be?
It could be a farm again, who knows?
Farm again. Could be a winery, could be a lot of, and that's the point, that because of its size, and we would ask for a larger sign.
So you have some things that you have to do.
So we'll come back with these various things that you've requested.
My suggestion would be that you immediately go to the building department and amend your application so that it can be advertised for the November hearing. 'Cause I don't know when they're doing the notice for the November meeting, but probably almost.
October 30th.
Pardon?
October 30th.
October 30th? Okay. So unless you file an amended application within the next few days,
right,
you'll miss the November calendar.
Okay.
So I would suggest that you do that rather than taking the time to debate about whether you actually need it or not.
Sounds good.
And you might state 3 signs.
I'm trying to get this to a situation where the board can consider your application.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Do we have anyone out in the audience who'd like to hear this application before we adjourn it? So we'll adjourn this for all purposes.
So moved, sir.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
The application of case number 2795, Matthew Stopnick, 40 North Main Street, for the applicant.
Hi, good evening. Susan Wolsensky from Spaces Landscape Architecture for the applicant. Please see the affidavit. And I have with me some photos that can help members understand this a little bit better. This. Please give the other members. Thank you. I'm here simply to request relief from Section 116-14H curb cut to allow two curb cuts on a property. It's allowed for a property width of 100 feet, and we are shy 6.3 feet on this property. If you look at the photos, and on the plan, you'll see the numbers for each photo. This property is a beautiful old Victorian, and there's a nice couple that have two young children, ages 2 and 4. And it's a narrow lot. There is not much recreational play for the children. In the backyard, there's a pool, and they are not yet comfortable in the water. So the only place for the children to play is in the front yard. And this particular lot shares a driveway with two single-family residents behind. And you can see that's the existing driveway on the plan on the north side. And so there are vehicles that go, and some go quite fast depending on who's driving. And their concern is for the safety of their children, and to understand that they can have some privacy from the neighbors, and have the knowledge of knowing that when they're out there that they would be safe from any oncoming cars. The proposed driveway meets all code setbacks and requirements for parking. And it is similar to the area that exists on site now. And you can see on the plan the dashed line where right now there's a parking area that comes off the existing driveway. So it's very similar in size, yet the proposed curb cut for a new entry onto this property on the other side of the property would be more appealing to the owners here for several reasons. Not only the fact that they will enclose this area for safety and have a hedge to eliminate the view of the other driveway, but the new curb cut and entry into the property is a more aesthetic entry in, as you can see from the photo number 4. That photo shows there's a nicely maintained residence just to the south that's 15 feet away. They want to come in on the more residential side of this property, whereas on the opposite side, the adjacent property owner is a commercial building with commercial trucks, and they just kind of want to separate themselves from that as well. So it makes sense for them, for their family, their safety, their privacy, and aesthetics, if they could get this curb cut, which is only 6.3 feet shy of the 100-foot.
This curb cut then would be just to the north of this one that you show in picture 4?
Yes.
It'd be very close to it then, huh?
Yes. It won't be as close as the other side, though, which to the commercial property, which you see in photo 1.
Now, would they still maintain access after this right-of-way?
Yes, they will. It's there. They have to. But again, it's really mainly for the safety of their children. And the new curb cut would be very similar to the residential curb cut that you see in this photo. You know, a nice Belgian block. You know, high quality, beautiful.
I don't
entry.
see in the picture where they would access the right-of-way.
No, the
it's
new
only on-
plan,
you
you're
can-
not gonna access the right, you're not gonna
Oh,
access.
it's going to be still there.
But you're not.
Oh, you're right. I'm
but
sorry.
you still
You're absolutely
access
right.
it.
You won't be
Yes,
using
they
it.
won't be using it, no.
Yeah.
But the
The
two.
right-of-way will be there,
Right, the right away will be
but
there.
they will have no access to it.
Yes, you're right.
And on the other side, where the new one goes, you'll be 10-foot setback from the other properties.
It's,
correct?
yes, that is code minimum, and we'll be from the driveway. from this driveway here along property line to this driveway, that'll be 15 feet. It's 10 feet minimal requirement for the setback for this driveway.
Right. Well, how do you get in and out of that driveway with 5 cars? I guess.
Well, I have to show 5 cars.
Yeah, I know.
That's a requirement. The clients only own 1 car, and they're only there on the weekends, and they would prefer to have it smaller. They don't expect to ever have 5 cars. They don't entertain that much. They're private people. But that was a requirement.
Okay.
The house is a 6-bedroom house. They only use 3. But
We show 5 spaces.
we show 5 spaces as long as you've access in and out. It's
Right.
Now, who owns the right-of-way?
he owns the right of way in his portion of the property. So he owns this whole section right here.
So he
And
owns the
will
whole
ma-
right-of-way.
Right.
We have a letter from Bernadette and Henry Watkins. They would like to support the new driveway plan, but they're concerned about overgrowth of the vegetation being a hindrance to any, like a fire truck has to go in there or an ambulance or something like that. And they would like to have something done.
Overgrowth.
That is concern of the owner. You know, that vegetation that is along there is his privacy to the commercial property, that is his screen. So he is going to maintain that, and he wants to, you know, and as far as access for utility vehicles or any, you know, fire trucks or anything, that would be only a benefit to him as well, in case there is any problem that they could pull in there. But yeah, that's his,
So if we grant
that
this,
is his,
if we grant this, we may make that one condition of the
that's fine.
decision, that he do something about the overgrowth of this vegetation.
Okay.
When you have a right-of-way, do you have the right to maintain it even though you don't own it?
Well, he owns it.
No,
He does.
the people in back.
I thought she said he owned it.
He does own it.
He does own
But
it,
in that,
yeah.
it's a right-of-way for the people in back.
Right.
Do they have the right to maintain it, to access it?
That I don't know.
It's still on his property. He still needs to maintain it. He understands that, and he wants to improve the plantings along there, because, as I said, from his house, he, you know, from interior, he will, you know, he views out any, you know, it's part of his property. It's his privacy hedge.
And if a tree falls down, he's gonna...
Well, you
That's
can
his
see that
responsibility.
But the trees are hanging very low there.
Yeah, I mean, that's like if a big truck went in there, it would take down
Take half that
branches
branch
down.
off.
Yeah.
And the privet to the north, it seems to be fairly overgrown. That's privet. I don't even know if it's privet or not.
We are going to address that as a landscape. We're going to develop a landscape plan for the whole site. But for now, he first wanted to see whether he could get approval for this so that we could further develop a whole site plan.
You're short by 7 feet, right? Is that the idea?
A little less than 7 feet,
A
yes.
little less than 7 feet.
I can see why they'd want to do it, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's an eyesore on that
Are they
side.
gonna give up the right to go out that?
The question is, are they going to give up the right to access the right-of-way?
As far as his parking, yes, there will be a gate in case he needs access over there to
No, we
maintain.
mean for cars.
But for cars, yeah, he will not need have it, and no, he will not have any need for that.
So he'd give up that right.
He would. I mean, there's no parking off of it, so he couldn't just park there. He'd be in the way. But he does have a little pedestrian gate in case he needs to go down and, you know, maintain, or anybody has to go
Right,
through
yeah,
there.
no,
Yes.
a walk-through gate, but
Right.
not a drive-through.
Why
Right.
wouldn't you want a drive-through gate in case you had to leave quick?
He really wants the security of
Alright.
for his children, that there is no easy access for them to run out onto the road.
It's hard for him to get out there anyway.
Right.
I assume his access now is about where he has the parking on your site plan. Is that where the access gate is now?
There is actually no access gate as far as
Well, where's
driveway
the curb
gates.
cut to
The
the-
pedestrian
Got the
gate,
dotted line shows.
the pedestrian gate is
Okay.
a little further east of the parking area right now.
A little further east or west?
East, the pedestrian gate. This gate you talking about?
No, I'm talking about the driveway gate now.
There's
How
no
does it get into his
driveway
property?
gates here.
There isn't any.
There's no driveway
There's
gates.
no driveway gate, it just
No.
goes right in the right of way and turns to the right to get in.
Right.
Like you can see in the photograph number 3 how it's this driveway just kind of comes straight into his front entry of the house. So there's
And then it
we
kind of
would like to
veers toward the
separate
left
that.
a little bit to the
Yeah, and
back.
then it veers to the left a little.
It was very close to his house, doesn't it?
It does. It's very awkward.
Those
Um,
houses in the back, do they have turnarounds and stuff?
They have same situation, pull in, park, back out.
Rick, did you have anything on this?
I don't know if you want to get any comments from Jonathan Foster on this.
The people that wrote the letter said they spoke with Dean McNamara. And they talked to Dean McNamara, fire marshal.
Do you have a comment?
Well, according to him, it should be 12 feet wide and 13.5 feet high. They said they'd be happy if it was just 11 foot wide. I think that it only shows it's only like 10 foot wide, right?
The driveway's 12 feet wide.
It says existing 10 foot plus or minus.
Oh, the existing,
See, what they're concerned with is that the vegetation is encroached. If it was 12 feet wide, it's not that wide anymore.
well, I do know if that's the concern. We are going to be removing some vegetation off the road and straightening out and fixing it up. I mean, it is not in the best of, visually it's not appealing, and functionally it could be improved, as you said. So some of the vegetation will be removed to the south of that driveway coming in on the right-hand side, and then the existing vegetation along the north property line is going to be selectively pruned and some things removed, some things replaced, and that has been in discussion. But as I said, I'll prepare a whole.
That is better maintained then?
I think so.
He doesn't want, he wants to be a good neighbor too. So there's.
So I think we probably would want to condition that. Maybe even have Jonathan Forster go down and go check it after it's done, or Dean McNamara go down and take a look at it.
Okay, but, I mean, I don't know how you impose a
I know it's crossing.
meaningful, oh no, you have the right to impose conditions, but we don't have, to me, we don't have meaningful language for the conditions. I mean, he's asking that attention be given to this, but to what extent? I mean, I don't want to impose a condition that's so vague that's why I'm suggesting maybe.
Well, right now, the people in the back can only go to the people in the front and say, can you cut the bushes back? If he doesn't do it, they don't have any recourse. If we write it into the decision, they could go to the village and say, hey, this guy's not maintaining this, fire trucks can't get in, and trucks, and then the village can write him a letter saying, decision, you've got to maintain.
I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't impose a
do that?
condition,
Yeah.
I'm saying, I don't know how to word it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can word it that it's maintained and clearance of the driveway. It's, that's not overhanging.
I think if you're going to impose a condition, I think you should have more specific specifications for that condition.
so as to conform to fire department needs.
And that none of the shrubbery grows over the curb, you know.
Dean says 12 feet wide and 13.3 feet high.
But lots of times the shrubbery will grow right over the curb, a foot into the driveway, so that maintained by being kept trimmed back from the curb, you know, and height, how much? 13 feet high, you
It
know?
says 13.3, 13.5 feet high.
I still wonder if people who have the right of way can maintain it. Are they allowed to maintain it? It's not being maintained by the owner of the right of way. Since it's a right of way,
That's
right of access.
We have to ask Rick that one.
I couldn't hear it. Something blowing back here that I can't hear
Do the
tonight.
people who have a right of way have the right to maintain the right of way, even though they don't own the right of way? In that, it's a right of access.
Yeah.
So they can trim it too. The people in back.
That would normally be the case, but that doesn't mean they're going to.
Well, if they want to get back and forth, they might.
Well, I assume these people are the ones that live in the back.
Probably,
Number
yeah.
46 is the back, right?
He's got it nicely maintained in the first footage where he
Right.
goes in, you know, then it gets narrow past his house where he doesn't go, you know?
Yeah.
These are the Watkins. I assume that's one of the neighbors in the back.
Yeah, I mean, it's tight, there's no doubt about it. It's tight, but, and he has good relations with the neighbors, and so, and.
Could you ask your client to speak with the Watkins in
Sure.
regard to their letter? All right?
Mm-hmm.
If he'll do that, that'll put the ball right back in his court, and it'll be between the two of them.
Yeah, it's no problem with that. He is, you know, I know he's spoken to them before, and there's no problem with that.
Anything else, Rick?
As I said, if you're thinking about imposing a condition, I think you should get input from John Foster as to the language
Okay.
of the condition. I mean, I don't think we should rely on a letter from neighbors that's quoting something that the building department has said, or may have said. I mean, maybe, I don't know if they have it right, and even the way they've worded it, it's kind of vague. So I think you should ask Jonathan to take a look at this and to give you written comments that could be incorporated into a decision.
All right. Anybody else would like to be heard to this application? Neighbors aren't here. So what we're going to have to do, then, we'll have to adjourn it for all purposes.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 It's two.
Application of case number 2796, Jasper Rose LLC, 60 Halsey Street.
Anthony Trezza on behalf of the applicant. You have the address 60 Halsey Street. You're probably aware this property's been before this board. It was a lengthy process, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details of the history. I just want to discuss what the substance of this new application is. You may recall under the current ZBA decisions that granted variances for the property, it covered the accessory structures here. If you recall in the survey, we have a through lot, and as a result of having no rear yard, there was a determination that basically everything from Fordham to the house would be considered a front yard. And in fact, your previous ZBA decision references that in actuality, to get an accessory structure in here would require or necessitate variances. So you granted the variances for a plan. What we're looking to do now is simply make a minor change. What previously you approved in the general terms within the front yard, although it met all the setbacks, previously the garage was back here on this property behind the main house. We are now proposing to bring it towards Fordham. Still meets all the setback requirements, but it's still located in a front yard. So it's really the same variance that we requested before. We're not asking for any setback relief. We're simply asking for the accessory structure to be located in a front yard, in this case, in a new location in the front yard. So that's what we're looking to do. The rest of, the project remains the same. If you recall, there had been a condition under the ZBA decision that asked that we file a covenant for no further subdivision. This property doesn't have an as-of-right subdivision potential. There's not enough lot area to do it, but it doesn't mean that someone couldn't go and make a good case for a zoning board variance. We agreed that we would impose a no further subdivision covenant on this property. I recently submitted to Mr. DePietris the legal documents necessary for him to review so we could file that covenant. However, that covenant is going to reference a specific plan that's approved by the zoning board, so obviously we didn't file that covenant knowing that we are coming back in to make a change to relocate the garage. In fact, your previous ZBA decision even noted that given the circumstances of the property being a through lot, you even used the term, the variances for the accessory structures were routine. And so I would submit to this board that we're not changing that routine status. We need the variance because the front yard is so big on this property, we can't get around that requirement. I just wanted the zoning board to take a look at the new plan so you can see the new location for the garage. We're, again, not asking for any setback relief. So the substance of the variance that was previously granted remains exactly the same. In fact, when we first went to the building department, it wasn't even clear if we needed to come back to the zoning board. In discussing with John, it made sense that we came back here. We're also before the Architectural Review Board again, so they could take a look at the elevation, and they're pending your decision. So if we get a favorable decision from this board, we will then go ahead and file the covenant. Then it poses no further subdivision for this property. But before I do that, obviously I want to get an approval from the board for the new garage location. And obviously I'm here to answer any questions you guys may have, or anybody from the public.
Well, first of all, we have several letters in opposition, strong opposition to a driveway onto Fordham Road. We have one from I can't read the signature, but, oh, I'm sorry, Pat and Peg Jordan, 84 Fordham Road. We have another one from from David and Nan Adams at 79 Fordham Road. We have another one, that's the Adams one. We have another one from Linda Volz at 44 Fordham Road. What they're opposed to is the driveway entry from Fordham Road.
If you recall, this property has, excuse me, I have a cold, a pre-existing structure that was also...
We have another one from Krista behind.
Right. And so the property owner has right of access off of Fordham. So I don't know really how to address that concern. There's a structure there that's already going to have access off of Fordham Road. So the objection, there's really not much I could do about that. The property owner has the rights to that.
Well, I just wanted you to be aware of
Yep, no,
I can understand the concerns. You got all this yard up here, and you're jamming the garage and the driveway all the way in the back, so it doesn't affect your house, but you don't object to being in everybody else's backyard.
Well, if you look...
That's what their objection is.
Well, directly across the street on Fordham, there's and it's a beautiful detached garage. I don't know if it's actually attached or detached. That faces Fordham. This is going to be very similar. Actually, this will be further back and less visible, but it's not like there aren't garages along Fordham. So we're not proposing a structure that is inconsistent with other structures on Fordham.
Despite the fact that there are a lot of driveways on Fordham Road, and that this would be one more driveway on Fordham Road.
And it's a windy road. You know, it's,
No, I understand.
It's a windy road and it's narrow.
Why is the garage back there anyway?
As opposed to where we originally approved it?
Yeah, I don't know where that is even.
It's a long walk from the
It was
garage
originally
to the
supplied
house.
behind the main house.
Let me just
Yeah.
interrupt and give you
Yeah.
a tip, because I know you haven't appeared before the board before, other than last month. When you file an application like this, you should file with the application copies of the prior variance. I mean, I have it, but the board doesn't have it. You should file copies of the prior variance, copies of the survey that came with the prior variance, so that then the board has right in front of them at the hearing what they previously approved and what changes you're now proposing.
Understood.
This makes it more difficult for them
I
because
understand, of
I
course.
can assure you they don't recall exactly what it was that they approved
This
some
was
time ago.
a pretty lengthy process and a lot of back and forth, and obviously, I was trying to get an application
Originally,
to meet the
the
deadline.
proposed garage was proposed to be
Behind the main house.
Yeah, but a garage for the main house. And it had a driveway running to it from Halsey Street. And originally, there was going to be a driveway on Fordham Road, more centrally located. Now you're proposing that the garage be a garage for the guest house, and that the driveway be shifted further to the south to go directly to the garage. So, I mean, it's a different concept than was before the board the last time in terms of the garage. So I think they're asking you, why do you now want a garage for the guest house rather than a garage for the main house? And secondly, let me correct one thing. You are going to have to file the covenant, whether the board approves or disapproves this application, because the covenant was also related to the relocation of the accessory building, which I can see you've done. So that covenant is, I mean, I can see waiting to finish up the covenant until
I
this.
want to reference the correct plan, if in fact,
Right, yeah, I can see that, but I just want you to make sure you understand that you're gonna have to do that covenant no matter what.
Understood,
Right,
understood.
And you can't get a CO for the relocated accessory building until you, the guest house, until you do that covenant.
Absolutely. As I said, I want to reference the correct plan if there's going to be a change to the plan, so that's why we haven't done it. But yes, I understand it still needs to be filed. It's a requirement of the previous decision. But I understand what you're saying about the change in the plan. What I submit to this board is that the change in the plan doesn't impact, the community. We're still, proposing a customary accessory structure, whether it's attached to the principal structure or the guest cottage that they have the legal rights to. I don't really see, for the purposes of the variance request here, why that would make a difference per se. The substance remains the same. It's still in a front yard. If this property was 2 lots, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion because the front yard would be different, but we're a through lot. So no matter where we put an accessory structure on here,
We need a variance.
we need a variance. So I would just simply submit to the board that the new location for the garage, despite the fact that neighbors object to it being on Fordham, property owner has a right to use Fordham, and is going to use Fordham, as the other board member said, that the location of this garage still meets the setbacks, and I just, again, the character of the community isn't going to be impacted by this. It's a structure similar to other ones in the immediate community. So,
Looking at the history of the process that we went through, we were met with many concerns from the people of Fordham Road that there was excessive activity and massing towards Fordham Road. We considered that. We approved relocation of the building, of the cottage there and the pool, but I think we were not considering putting anything else there. The massing towards Halsey is to be expected. It's a bigger road, it's a bigger building. I don't think that Fordham Road Fordham Road was objecting to the massing in the first place, and now we're adding on to it. That's the history. That is the history, though, of this process.
As I said, there was objections every step of the way from this. It came to this board.
That's true.
So, but let me just say that the garage is shifted away from Fordham Road. It's not sitting right on top of Fordham Road. It's behind the structure. There's going to be vegetation and buffering. And then we're going to, deal with the landscaping from the plan. So I would argue that the massing isn't really increased along Fordham Road because of this garage. It's set back far, again, behind the other structure. So and
but the traffic was considered to be minimal on Fordham Road because we were talking about a guest cottage, and now we're talking about the principal garage for the entire 2 residences.
Again, the guest cottage still has access, and the property owner has the right to the access. So not putting a garage there doesn't eliminate the access off of Fordham Road. That property owner still has the right to utilize it. I can't imagine that there would be some magnificent traffic impact because the garage is being relocated to Fordham Road.
Well, isn't that the original approved survey from, in other words,
I have to...
what did we approve originally? I want to see, was there a garage on that?
No, well, up front, I don't know, I guess there was.
Yeah, there was.
Notice I said
Right.
up front.
This is, yeah. See?
Where's the garage?
Behind the
Service from this driveway, so. Do you want to see it?
Oh,
you have it?
I still have my old file because I was
right.
holding it for the covenant. This is what was approved in the prior variance. Relocating the accessory guest cottage to here, pool.
And we did that because we wanted to preserve that old building.
Right, there would have been a driveway here with some parking. The garage that we approved was for this house, with access from Halsey Street. So now they're proposing the garage over here, and it would be apparently, I don't know whether it's for the guest house or that's why I asked them, why are they proposing the...
Very mysterious
a
why the
garage
garage would be back by the guest house.
And jammed up against the swimming pool.
Right. But you would think the garage is going to service the main house.
You're gonna have parking, because they got a big parking thing here plus a garage. So you're gonna have cars plus the garage plus a driveway all around a pool.
And that's the
I
main,
like it.
arguably the main vehicle access, although I'm sure.
Well, if that's
But
where
it's
the
a long
garage is.
walk.
They're not
to the
gonna use the
house.
garage in the front now. They're just gonna park in the driveway in the front.
Yeah.
No, I think we understand that the owner has a right to access out to Fordham Road.
Mm-hmm.
And when we approved the application, it was for the guest house. And there were 2 parking spaces there.
Mhm.
And the garage was to service the main house. So the people using the garage would be coming off of Halsey Street. Now, what the neighbors seem to be objecting to, well, first of all, I don't think they like the idea of the access at all, but that's another story. But if you put the garage back there, then the cars are gonna be going in and out of that garage on Fordham Road. There won't be any driveway coming off of Halsey Street going back to that garage. It doesn't
No,
make
I
any
mean, the
sense.
access to the main house is obviously off of Halsey, so, but you're right, it's not being, the garage is being relocated, it'll have to be accessed off of Fordham Road. That's what the applicant is proposing to do. The location of the garage previously behind the house simply didn't work. It was not a good location for the garage. There's a big property, there's plenty of room to put accessory structures. And I would submit to the board that the impact along Fordham Road is
It
negligible.
certainly would work for me to have the garage up near the main house.
But again, that's okay, but this property does have a guest cottage on there, has a legal right to a
Yeah,
guest
and
cottage.
that's
So
parking in the front.
I don't think it's entirely unreasonable that second residential structure there would have an accessory garage associated with it. I just, it may not be, understanding that it may not make entirely make sense to you, to other people, but it's not unreasonable that a second residential structure would have the garage associated.
Why would you have a garage there and not for the house?
Again, the property owner decided to change it. It was not in a good location behind the house. It didn't make any sense.
It makes some sense.
Makes a lot
End
of
of the
sense.
driveway.
Where garages usually go.
Not for them, it didn't.
You have a detached garage, that's where it goes.
You're
Again,
not
this
really
is-
answering the question.
This is an estate parcel too.
You're
It's
just
a piece of
saying that
property.
they didn't want it there.
That's right. He's answering the question, so this
So
is.
why don't we
what
adjourn it for all
And I just
purposes,
said to
and you can
that
answer the
absolute
question?
Property owner wanted it relocated and didn't want it directly behind the house.
Maybe you should ask him to rethink his, where he wants the garage.
I'm not looking too favorably upon it right now, so.
No.
I mean, all right, let's say that this gets granted, so he gets a garage back there. Will he then come back and say, well, you know, I really do need a garage up toward Halsey Street? And he's gonna want another garage? Is that
No.
a possibility?
No.
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
Well, I mean, I could discuss a condition
He's gonna come
with
say,
my
well,
client
that
we would
garage is
post
too
a
far
tech-
from my house, I want one closer.
I could discuss with my client a condition if you wanted to impose something that addressed that issue.
I think you should discuss with your client where the garage was originally. That's the plan that we approved.
Yeah.
I'm still happy with that plan.
So am I. I mean, we understand the pool, we understand the carriage house, which they seem to have done a very nice job with it down Fordham Road today. And it looks very nice, it's very attractive compared to what it looked like before. And we have some screening there, it's gonna be fine. And the driveway off of Fordham Road with the 2 parking spaces, I don't suppose is gonna have guests every weekend. Maybe just occasionally, there'll be a car coming in to use that parking space. For his guests, who will
I'll
probably only
certainly
come
go
with
back
one
to
car
my
anyway.
client and discuss it with them.
Huh?
I'll go back to my client and discuss, the issues that the board raised. Again, I understand this property had a lot of opposition from the beginning, and we know that coming into this, that there was opposition. I knew
Yes.
there'd be objections from neighbors. I expected it. But before the board renders any final decision, let me go back to my client and discuss it. I'd like the opportunity
We won't
at
render
least
any
to.
decision this evening.
We're not rendering, no.
Is there anyone out in the audience who'd like to refer to this application? No, but we have all the letters.
Yes.
One briefly,
Oh.
if I may.
Sure.
Andy Lockwood, 45 Fordham Road. I'm the neighbor directly south of the property in question. A lot of what I wanted to touch on was already discussed. My main concern was that the conditions that were placed going through the original process in your decision be maintained. The covenant not to subdivide, which to me, this whole reorganization kind of got me a little, wondering about that. I know the covenant hadn't been filed yet. It just didn't seem to make sense to place that garage there, but that's neither here nor there. Secondly, we had a lot of discussion and approved landscaping plan, which now does not match what is being submitted. So I mean, my position being adjacent to the site is that that landscaping plan be maintained. That driveway is now shifted closer to our property line, and that whole plan is different. In addition, I would just argue that changing of that location does kind of impact us, aesthetically. And I would also like to point out that the structure that you granted the variance to be moved is completed now, or at least the outside, the shell is completed. And the dimensions of that structure on the plan that you have before you today for this application is different, it's larger than what was approved in the previous decision by about 100 square feet. It's been enlarged. I guess, I mean, I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if it affects this decision, but the fact remains that it's been altered. Thank you.
Thank you. So, let's adjourn this.
There's been talk about the size of the structure. Unfortunately, the other people that were supposed to be here with me tonight are not here to answer some of these other questions. So I'll look into the construction, but as far as I know, there weren't any alterations, but I'll have to look at that. John Foster would have obviously seen some changes to the plan, so I got to look into it. It's the first I'm hearing of it, so.
Very good. Adjournment for all purposes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Let's see.
A little more flack than you expected. The application of case number 2797, Richard Burge Senior, 408 First Neck Lane.
The applicant, John Bennett. I'll try to be quick. I have a long agenda still. This is an application for relief from the restriction against accessory structures in the front yard. The property is a 8.3 acre parcel on First Neck Lane. And we're proposing a tennis court in a north-south direction in a conforming location to the side yard, 35 feet, conforming to the front yard accessory setbacks, but it would nevertheless be in the front yard. The court is proposed at 592 feet from First Neck Lane, which is, I guess that's approximately 2 football fields. But in addition to the request for relief from First Neck Lane of 592 feet in the front yard, we're also requesting prospective relief so that we don't come back after the next process that we're going to engage in this property, which is a subdivision of the property, splitting off a conforming lot in the front. And this is the reason I'm casting the application both as a pre and post subdivision application, as I'm trying to remember what Dr. Foreman always used to say, not coming back to the board when we should have been able to anticipate something. Hopefully her spirit and her directives are, to a certain degree,
to a degree,
still being followed. Anyway, this is not an unusual situation in terms of both the pre-application request. I did, you guys were kind enough on the waterside development application at 465 Captain's Neck Lane, which is, you were kind enough to grant 2 variances for an as of yet, at that time, prior to the subdivision, in anticipation of the subdivision, for 2 front yard tennis courts. This is not exactly the same situation, but it is a request for both relief for the lot as it currently exists and relief down the road for when the lot would be subdivided. I don't want to forget. I did tell Gil Flanagan that I would, and I know he did put the copies of the letter in the file, but I did want
From the neighbor?
From the neighbor who.
Yes, he handed that to us before.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure I represented the Gil, that I would make sure that.
He has no objection, he said.
He has no objection as long as it's maintained at this 35-foot
Right.
side yard and doesn't slide down to the south, which we have no problem with that
I
condition.
think his name is, what's the name?
Lindsay,
Yeah,
I believe.
Lindsay,
yeah.
yeah. We have his letter in the file.
I have some, I put a couple of other examples of front yard tennis court variances in the file, but you folks are well aware of that that's a typical request for relief, particularly in this, where there's wetlands. So I think, I don't want to be
It's a
too...
waterfront lot, right?
Yeah, I don't want to be, again, I don't want to be too cavalier about the application, but I think it's similar to relief that you've often granted. The only thing that's a little bit, and I say a little bit unusual, but not totally unusual, is that I'm asking for both relief now at 592, because they sort of like to get going with it, but also we're in the process. Squires and Holden is developing the maps for a subdivision application for the parcel and that proposed subdivision line is shown on the map. I just don't have the full subdivision application filed yet because the engineering and all the other things that are necessary for a complete subdivision application haven't been provided to me yet. There are some structures that are very close to the northerly property line, and we've noted that upon any subdivision, those would have to be either removed or
Like the
either taken away or
greenhouse?
moved to a conforming location.
So like a greenhouse and garage?
There's a greenhouse and there's a greenhouse and garage, but there's also in that unit, and the CEO reflects it, there's also a caretaker's apartment. It's a little bit getting ahead of the game to a certain degree, but the owners understand that on a subdivision application they would have to terminate the use of the apartment there. I'm trying to think of what else. We of course have to go to the planning board, and in anticipation of that, I think you should have in your packets planting plan and landscape drawings from Ed Hollander. The notice does also talk about a viewing area on the east side of the tennis court, but and I put that request for relief in there. I think out of perhaps an abundance of caution, because it's essentially a pergola, and I believe Rick will confirm that a pergola is allowed in I think required in a rear yard, a front yard, but you can't have it in a required side yard. So you can actually have a pergola in a front yard, I believe. But if you want to put that in any decision, that would be fine. I don't think there's any need for relief for a pergola. Which is essentially what the viewing area is. It's shown on Ed Hollander's site plan for Ed Hollander's landscape construction drawings in the site plan.
Okay, would you point that out to us, because I'm looking at the survey?
Well, the survey doesn't have it, because I didn't think it was necessary, but it is on Ed Hollander's L1.
John, if you're going to ask us for...
I don't know that I need relief for it, Rick. That's why it's a pergola. It's a viewing area, but if it's attached to the tennis court, does that become part of the requirement for relief? I don't know.
Okay, I'm not saying whether it does or doesn't off the top of my head,
Okay.
But you asked for it, and if you asked for it, we need to see
It's on Ed Hollander's
L1?
It's the second page. Right? Second page of the Hollander plans, which I handed in as part of the application. And then he also shows it in
But
elevation.
that has no dimensions.
Well, sure it does. An L1.
John, could you do
L1.10.
Could you do what you normally do and have it shown on the survey with dimensions?
Sure, not a problem. Not a
Is this the pergola here?
Yeah, I think to the right. This thing, yeah, you can see it here too. The viewing of tennis.
You can also see it on L1.10. Bluestone terrace on concrete slab, and then it's shown in elevation.
2.1.
It's shown in elevation on the last sheet you have, L5.30. So it's essentially a pergola. I think the code is a pergola can be in the only place you can't have a pergola is a required side yard. You can have it in the front and the rear yard.
Okay, John, I'm not going to...
No, I'm just, I already said
I'm not saying whether it does or doesn't need a variance, but if you're going to ask for it, I want to see it on the survey. If you want to withdraw it and talk about it with the building department, that's fine. But I'm not going to tell you at 10 o'clock at night whether it does or does not need a variance.
Well, let me ask the
when I'm hearing it for the first time today that you consider it a pergola.
Well, let me ask you the question. Is there any possibility on a decision for this tonight?
No.
Okay, so then it's academic.
Not if you
Let me
want a decision as to both subdivision and
No.
existing.
Okay, no, that's, it should be all in one package. So why don't we adjourn it, and I'll put it on the survey, the pergola on the survey, and I know that's not complicated, but it's a little, that's something that you want to write, so I'll adjourn it for, if we could adjourn it for all purposes, if I get you something by the work sessions. Are we going to have a decision next week?
Okay, the work session is, as you heard before, if you were here earlier, the work session is, because of our November schedule, the work session is Tuesday night, the meeting is Thursday night. I don't know how many decisions I'm gonna have to write for Thursday. This is not necessarily something that's going to get done a day and a half later. Follow me?
Yeah, I do, but I think you have everything you need. All I can do is respectfully ask. I'm not gonna burden you anymore.
And all I can do is respectfully say that it depends on my schedule.
I understand that. No, I
It doesn't sound like a tennis court would be a high priority item at the beginning of the winter.
You never know what aggressive
I beg you, my attention to other matters
that
might have more priority.
Excuse me? What'd you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing. So I didn't hear the last thing.
If there are several items on for decision, and I'm only going to have time to do some,
Yeah, no, I got it.
I'm likely to give priority to the ones that really need immediate attention.
The orphanages and stuff.
The orphanages. We got an application for an orphanage. I'm not gonna push it right this discussion. I understand. Let me get it on the
It
survey.
wouldn't need a written decision, except for the fact that you've, and don't take this wrong, it's 10 o'clock at night, you've complicated it by an alternative request.
Because of the.
I understand that, but I'm not gonna try to orally word an alternative request.
That would be crazy. I understand.
So,
I got it.
all right, so.
Is there anyone
I
in the
already
public who would
I
like to be heard for
surrendered
this
about 2 minutes
application?
Okay, I'm glad you surrendered, because I'm getting tired.
Seeing as there's no one who wishes to be heard, we're going to adjourn this for all purposes. May I
So
have a motion?
moved, so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's do another tennis court.
I was hoping we weren't going back to the old days.
You didn't see my white tie.
I asked you for 1 minute delay to change the
Sure.
battery and record.
Sure.
So
You back on? Okay. On the application of case number 2798, Alexander Ropers, 1690 Meadow Lane.
For the applicant, Brian Benner, I submitted the
Got in cleanup tonight.
application. Again, I'm trying to,
First, second, and third.
first, second, and third. Anybody know what's happening in the World Series?
1-0 St. Louis.
Thank you.
Really?
Thank you.
Bottom of the second.
Bottom of the what?
Sixth.
Early.
Oh, thanks.
Sixth?
I didn't-
He didn't say, yeah, it sounded like second.
If it were the Yankees, I'd have to ask you who you're rooting for. But since it's not the Yankees, I won't ask.
This is a request for relief to place a tennis court in a front yard on an oceanfront lot on Meadow Lane. The lot is proposed make sure I have 98 feet at its closest to Meadow Lane. And we have to stay out, we're going to conform to the wetland setback. The wetlands are across Dune Road, and we have a scenic easement and both the scenic easement and the subdivision map and the new conservation buffer area that's in the front to keep us away from the wetland. We have the coastal erosion hazard area to the south. Here's
Did you
the
get the postings for this one?
reasonable area for the improvements on the property, and the only real place the tennis court can go is in the front yard. We meet the 90-foot front yard setback requirements. It's not an unusual application. You've seen many of them. I've submitted some of those applications that were granted along Meadow Lane in the actual applications. I've also have for your consideration a not terribly clear aerial that I got from obtained from Google Earth, but it is clear enough so that you can see that tennis courts are the exception. Tennis courts in the front yard are the exception, but not the rule along Meadow Lane. There's 1690 Meadow Lane. The first page is the view to the west. The second page is the view to the east, and you can see almost every lot on Meadow Lane in that area has a tennis court. And unless they were built prior to 1982 82, is it, 83? They were there as a result of a variance. The lot to the west, which is lot number either 1 or 2 of, what was the name of her? I'm trying to remember her name. Linda Walkner. Lot number 2 of the Linda Walkner subdivision has a variance for a tennis court to 100 feet. I grant you copies of those. I don't know whether or not that tennis court was ever built, but nevertheless there is a variance. Gregory Dems from Peter Marino Architects is here this evening. He's a private architect, and he can explain further if you need. I'm not so sure that you need his explanation. The drawings and the visuals tell the story. You can see we have a very nice viewing showing that not only will the tennis court be as far away from the Dune Road as possible, Meadowland as possible, but we're going to attempt to sink it as much as we can, given the fact that there can be some challenges on the depth to groundwater in the area. I think what's also helpful is what we've done is on this photograph on the lower, well, it's to your lower right, we've photoshopped the proposed house, but what you see here in terms of vegetative buffer is existing. So you're simply not going to see the court. We're also going to attempt to sink the court as much as possible. It's not an unusual application. The board has granted, as far as I've been able to tell, pretty much every request for a front yard tennis court on Meadow Lane, and we simply ask that the board take the same approach on this matter. Again, I don't want to be too presumptuous or cavalier about the application, but it's a front yard tennis court on Meadow Lane, conforming with the 90-foot setback seems to be something that the board doesn't have a hard time granting.
And the only thing you're asking for is for tennis court in the front yard, but not the required front yard.
Tennis court in the front yard, but not the required front
Anything
yard.
from the side, anything from the wetlands?
Everything else conforms.
No questions.
No questions?
No.
Rick, anything?
No questions, but unfortunately, a comment.
Okay, sure.
It looks like that the zoning board office made a mistake when they did the public hearing notice. And I guess you didn't notice it when you...
What did they do?
Circulated it? I mean, you presumably got it to mail it to neighbors.
Yeah.
It was advertised for a setback of 153 feet, whereas what you asked for was 98 feet, and that's what the survey shows.
Well, you've got the neighbors were all notified with the actual application, and they saw the application at.
I'm just raising it. I'm asking for your comments.
I would think I'd substantially complied with the notice requirements.
Okay,
and I would ask the board to.
Okay, when you sent the notice to neighbors, you included
I always include the entire application.
The entire application and survey? Okay, because some people don't.
No, I do that so that, to be honest with you, I do that so people can't come to the meeting and say, I never saw this until tonight.
Okay, I thought you did, and that's what I wanted to ask. Okay, I don't have a problem if that's what he did.
The ordinance like to hear this application.
Want to do it? This is an application for a front yard variance in order to permit a proposed tennis court in the front yard with a street setback of 98 feet, period. The proposed tennis court would be located further from the street than the minimum street setback requirement of 90 feet, period. However, a front yard variance is necessary because the tennis court would be located closer to the street than the one-family dwelling, period. Upon considering all of the information submitted by the applicant, this application is consistent with our policy on oceanfront lots and for the reasons previously indicated, we find that the requested variance is warranted. Period. Therefore, we grant a front yard variance in order to permit the proposed tennis court in a front yard with a street setback of at least 98 feet.
I move we accept this decision as proposed.
I second.
All in favor?
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
No.
Have a happy Halloween, everybody.
Oh, thank
What are you
you.
guys being for Halloween?
Ourselves.
What?
ARB types.
Thank you.
On the application of case number 2799, GWB Southampton LLC, 132 McGee Street.
The applicant, David Gilmartin Jr., Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill, New York. I'm going to ask that Stephen Dubb, who is the one of the members of the LLC, go through the site plan that we're proposing. This is at the old Squires and Pearson parcel. We're asking for a change from one non-conforming use to another. Squires and Pearson parcel is used for an industrial, commercial use. It is a septic or cesspool installation and service facility. Currently, we've submitted an EAF on that sets that out, and Stephen will run you through the site plan as we're proposing it. It is being joined with the property to the south, which is Bishop's Pond, that's currently being built. We asked for similar variance in that, and Stephen will run you through the plan. I have a submission, which has some of the background information and pictures that I will submit.
Hi, Stephen Dubb from GWB Southampton. This is an aerial, it's a couple years old, showing the project we're building now, Bishop's Pond, and the Pearson property.
I got this stuff. It's in the packet.
Do you have that?
I think, yeah, he gave me one.
Okay, so this is a couple years old. This was the 13 acres. It's Bishop's Pond, and this is the Pearson property down here. Both were used as sand mines, storage facilities, and the Pearson property also is a septic facility, like David mentioned. This is a recent aerial from a couple of weeks ago, showing the development we've done at Bishop's Pond, and I hope you agree that there's a nice difference, and the Pearson property is still the way it was a few years ago. What we've done in the area, with the exception of the Pearson property, it's now primarily residential or agricultural across the street, so we feel that building homes here is, within the context of the community, is a better use than its current use, and that the neighbors and rest of the community will support it. The site plan we're proposing is 11 homes. They're all models that we have planned for Bishop's Pond or have built already. So this is a building of 5 townhomes, and this is a building of 4 townhomes and 2 flat units. So you can get an idea of what they look like. They are our E and B model townhomes. The wider one here is a B model. There are 3 proposed, and these are our E units. There are 6 proposed. And the flats are our A units. This is a building of 6 flats, so this is just one, and that's what the 2 flats would look like. That's one over the other. Like Rooney mentioned, we're going to join it with Bishop's Pond, so you'll have one main entrance that'll go down into the Pearson property, so there won't be a second entrance onto the street. And this is how the plan would join Bishop's Pond. This is the Pearson's property over here. And I believe, although it would be addressed in the site plan process, we may have to have an emergency exit for the fire trucks over here. Other than that, it'll be connected to the existing sewage treatment plant. We've got the capacity for it, so that's not an issue. Will contain all stormwater on site, and I think that's it.
You have a letter.
Oh, overall, did I not mention the density? So what we're asking for at 11 units is 6 units to the acre, which is the same density we were approved for over here. It might be worth mentioning, though, we were approved for 78 homes here, and we actually just revised it down to 69 homes 2 weeks ago. So we gave up 9 units in density, although we were approved for the 60 acres. So this would only be a net increase of 2 units over what's now going to be almost 15 acres, as opposed to what was approved for the 13 originally.
And that amendment was approved by the planning board at their last meeting.
We do have a letter from a Mr. James F. Sanford.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I couldn't hear you, Rooney.
I'm sorry, the planning board did approve our reduction, the site plan and the reduction of the number of units on the Bishop's
Oh, on
Pond.
the adjoining property.
Correct.
When you reduced the number of units, did you increase the size of the planned units, or?
We did. We had the units that we eliminated were our smallest and densest units, and they were what's shown over here. This is now a total of 8 units. It's that's not right. I'm sorry. 14 units. It's 12 flats, 12 of our larger flats, and 2 townhomes. This had previously been 22 units across these 2 buildings, and 11 of the units didn't have a parking garage. They parked on the street. So this area, we hadn't built this type of unit before anywhere else on the site, so it was the densest looking area of the site, and we felt like it wouldn't be in keeping with the rest of the community, so we made the decision to reduce yield and build larger units here.
We do have this letter from Mr. James Sanford. He and his sister own 120 McGee Street. They support the application, however, they have concerns about the elevation, that they may get some flooding, they may get something from the septic system, but don't you have a treatment plan, right?
Yeah, that's
There won't
correct.
be any septic tanks.
There will be no septic. As far as the grading, the plan we have right now, and I don't know if that's something for zoning or if it's dealt with in the site plan approval process, but in order to have the sanitary flow go to the sewage treatment plant over here, the elevation of this property's got to be, or the sewer lines in it have to be slightly above the elevation of the STP, and that's what causes us to have to raise the grade over where it is right now. So in our site plan, and I think we submitted a conceptual plan, we've got a retaining wall that for about half the length of the property, running from here around to about over here, would be 4 feet in height. So if you're one of these properties, you're 4 feet lower than the top of a retaining wall here. We can certainly deal with it in the site plan approval process, figuring out ways to reduce the height of the wall if it's possible, or to landscape and buffer for it. I think it's worth pointing out, if you look at aerials of this property and this property and this property over here, everybody has a 6-foot fence, stockade fence over here, so they wouldn't see our 4-foot retaining wall anyway.
Yeah, they are concerned about the visual aspects of it. And
It does seem to me that those concerns are concerns properly to be addressed by the planning board.
I would also add that I think the view with what we create is going to be far better than what's there
Oh,
currently.
yeah.
Yeah, as we've always worked with the community,
George met with some of the neighbors. I think those concerns were expressed to George, and we've got absolutely no problem with landscaping in front of the wall, on top of the wall, both on their property if they like it. We want the neighbors to be happy, and we'll do what we can to keep them happy.
Well, it kind of seems that these two people don't live in Southampton all the time. This letter came from Fairfax, Virginia, and his sister lives in New Jersey. So I guess they only use it maybe during the season.
And we'll work with them on screening so that they're not negatively impacted. The standard for you guys to consider this is whether it's beneficial for the neighborhood. As part of our mailings, I had to send one to Francis Genovese, who called me yesterday and said to me, "Res ipsa loquitur," which, as a zoning nerd and law school student, I know is the thing speaks for itself. I think that this application is clearly more beneficial than what goes on there. But, you know, with respect to your balancing test, the comp plan calls for residential uses. It's consistent as opposed to the commercial use that exists there. You are the only entity that could give us the relief to build this structure. It's an R20 zone. To get the multifamily, we need your approval. I'd submit to you that it's not substantial. It's such a better impact project than what currently exists there. So it's not substantial. It's not a self-created hardship. This was a pre-existing non-conforming use, and we're changing it to what is more conforming use-wise, being that it's residential, and we'd respectfully request that you grant the application.
Rick?
Yeah, I don't have any question at the moment about the change of use they're asking for. This is similar to the ponds project that we had before us. But I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news, but from looking at this afternoon, it looks to me like there are various dimensional variances that you need that haven't been requested or asked for or advertised. So it looks to me like you're going to, I'll come back to that in a minute, it looks to me like you're going to need to amend the applications to ask for those dimensional variances and then to re-advertise. Some of the dimensional variances are the same kind of variances that we granted on the project to the north, but they haven't been asked for here. And the only other thing I was wondering, have you been before the planning board preliminarily on this, or?
We have not.
Okay.
We're waiting until we had some sort of indication from this board.
I didn't, you know, in light of the need for some apparent need anyhow, you can look at it after if you want to, but if on the assumption that you do need some dimensional variances that haven't been asked for, the exact data on those dimensional variances might depend on your site plan layout. So I don't know if it would be worthwhile for you to go preliminarily before the planning board. If I recall right, you had been on the ponds project, you had been preliminarily before the planning board before you came here, didn't you?
I don't remember.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm just going by recollection. But
as part of our application, we submitted something called Conceptual Plot Plan A that did an analysis of the setbacks. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and I think there are some errors on that.
Okay. I mean, I did discuss it with the planning board, and this is what was submitted to them. But if there's additional relief we need, then we'll come back and make that request.
I mean, I can go over it quickly with you now, or you?
I would appreciate that.
Okay. Okay. Again, the conceptual plot plan says that the area of the subject lot is 77,471 square feet.
Correct.
So I'm using that figure. I'm assuming it's accurate. The maximum lot coverage is 14% of lot area plus 1,500 square feet. That math would be 12,346 square feet. And your proposed lot coverage is 19,815 square feet. The data on the conceptual site plan mentions two things, the 14% plus 1,500 and also the maximum of 30. But here, you're dealing with the maximum of 14 plus 1,500. So it looks to me like you need a lot coverage variance. I think you also needed one on the Ponds project, which we granted.
That's correct, we did.
So you need to take a closer look at that. And then there is some apparent need, to me, apparent need for yard variances. The front yard requirement based on the size of the lot is 80 feet. The 40-foot figure that's on the conceptual site plan, is the requirement for R20 without getting into the size of the lot. And I'm pretty sure in the Ponds project, the same thing was there, and we granted a variance from 80 feet to 40 feet under those circumstances. But the variance hasn't been asked for or advertised. It also looks like you need a rear yard variance for the same reason. The rear yard requirement being based on the lot area rather than the zone. I'm assuming, let's see, the conceptual site plan talks about a 30-foot rear yard requirement, but I don't know where they're getting that from. And I'm guessing from the conceptual site plan layout that you're electing the easterly line as the front lot line, because that's where you're showing 40 feet, and the westerly line as the rear lot line where you're showing 36 or something. So it looks to me like you need both front and rear yard variances.
And I think it's clear that our engineer did not go through the code, and it was.
Yeah, I think he was working off of the R20 zone rather than the more recent.
Correct.
Okay, and the same thing for the side yard requirement.
We'll go back and we'll amend. We'll have them amend the survey and resubmit, and then re-advertise for the next meeting.
Yeah, I would have let you know ahead of time if I had had an opportunity to
fair enough.
Review this before this afternoon. But
we got the survey late, so it was a hurry to get it in and see that we've done it properly. I think I just did. But, thank you.
Okay. I don't know if you're going to have time to amend and re-advertise for the...
We'll get it in by the 30th based on their...
Okay.
We will.
Yep.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience would like to be heard to this application? Francis? What? Is it permitted?
No, it's preliminary.
Preliminary to what?
To the state that the application is in now. I just thought you might like to have a status report. That's a unique thing in this because we have something we can look at in terms of the effect of the development on the neighborhood. I think if you looked at the first picture that Mr. Dubb produced, you'll see that there is no delineation. The property, the Squires and Pearson property and the Rambo property are identical. topographically, geographically, aesthetically, and even in terms of function, with the addition of human effluvia on the Squires and Pearson lot. So, to just digress for 1 second, a historic event occurred this week. After 30 years, the DEC decided that BB&S Lumber, which was on the Superfund, was now a site that was okay. It had been remediated. Maybe only Mr. DePietris is alive long enough to remember, but BB&S Lumber was owned by Rambo. They owned BB&S Lumber, an arsenic-producing site, and they brought its products down to the site on Bishop's Lane. They also owned a comparable site in Rhode Island that was on the CERCLA list, but after 30 years, the DEC remediated it, and the tab was given to the taxpayers, $4.5 million. These people remediated the Rambo site in 1 year, completely remediated it at their own expense. So, in addition to that, there are some other things that we consider.
Well, I think we understand that this is a vast improvement over what was here before.
Well, I wonder if the board understands how vast an improvement it is, but I can hold that to the planning board meeting if you like.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good enough.
Gee, I was getting interested.
What?
So we're going to adjourn this for all purposes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You don't want to get her.
Yes, I do. What inning are we in, maybe?
Thank you all.
Okay.
They treated lumber, they were treated with arsenic. So on the side,
how are you?
like the rental site, everything that's stored in there, pushed into the ground. It's like they remediated one.
Right. That's a nice couple.
The other side's, the taxpayer didn't look that
Good.
bad.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's like a kudos to.
Well, it might have been a larger site.
Yeah.
It took them 30 years.
Yes. Better or worse.
Now we come to the end of the line. Case number 2800, Recom Holdings LLC, 51 Pond Lane.
For the applicant, David Gilmartin Jr., Kyle Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill, New York. This is an application to move a pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure from a side yard to the rear yard to a conforming location. Again, the cottage is a CO'd pre-existing non-conforming structure. It's located about 5 feet off the north property line, and we are proposing to move it to the rear northwest corner in a conforming location. We are, and Lemansky, the engineer in the project here, we are going to literally move the exact structure that exists to the rear. And Mr. Lemansky will step forward and explain the project.
Okay, can I interrupt before you do
Better
that?
give one to Rick, too.
The packet that I got at the work session
Did not have it.
only has the application.
Right. They're all in here, they're all in the file.
Oh, okay, I was going to
I
ask you.
handed them out. I noticed that this afternoon when I was there. We didn't have the survey in our packets. I left them all in the file.
Unfortunately.
They're here now.
That means that we might know all the questions. We might not know all the questions we might have just because of the fact that we hadn't seen the survey. But go ahead.
Stephen Lemansky, Southampton Engineering. As Rooney said, there's a pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure, cottage, CO'd, on the property on the north side, 5 feet off. It's a wood frame structure on a block foundation. It's in good structural shape. It can be picked up in one piece, moved to the back of the lot, and set back on another crawl space foundation. And that's what's intended.
That's so you can have the pool house where this was before, is that the idea?
No, there's, on the existing site is a home, this cottage, a barn, and a small shed that's kind of north of an existing pool that's also proposed to be demolished at some point.
Right.
Um,
We're gonna remove the barn.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then they're gonna remove the house and build a new house?
Hopefully.
It's hard to tell from this, where was
Do
the
you have
cottage
a-
before?
Do you have, or
Yeah, right?
I think there's a...
can you get us what
In
we
the
like
middle
to
of the
have
creek.
on this kind of a thing is
Is that it?
an existing condition survey
Okay.
so that you can see what's there now without having to have,
Right, I don't know if this was submitted in the pack, but this is
we'll all need copies.
the house, the cottage, the garage, the pool, and the shed.
Are they in the package?
I only have
If
a
they're in
new
the package, let
survey.
me see if they're in the file.
No, that is not in the package.
That's not in the package.
Okay, well,
Okay.
we're gonna need copies of that.
This is it, so we need more copies of that.
So you'll need to file more copies. If you want to send one directly to my office, that's fine.
That's a pre-existing survey, that's what exists on the lot right now.
So
Yes.
it does have a pool now, but not the
Yes,
same
it
kind
does.
of pool. It has this garage, is that what you meant by the barn?
Right,
And the one-story cottage is considerably closer to the street,
right,
and it's on the northerly property line.
correct.
So that'll just go like straight back and into it.
And into a conforming location in the northwest corner.
Okay.
Oh, is this the property that's under some historical issues? Is this?
It is.
Got it.
The historical issues have to do with the main structure, not with the cottage structure.
Right.
I mean, okay, as I was looking this over without benefit of a survey, I did have a couple of other questions. Number one, is there a current CO or a relatively recent CO for the property? The only thing that I have is Exhibit B is a CO from 1969, and I don't know what that's for.
That is the only CO that I was able to locate in the building department's file. There was some relief given by this board to allow for a subdivision and these existing structures to remain there, sometime in the 60s.
Everything you have is what's,
Is what I was able
the
to
exhibits to your
Correct.
application?
I actually have a statement that I can submit.
I mean, just from looking at that, I have to guess that this cottage is not a second principal dwelling, but rather is an accessory guest cottage.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
right here.
Okay, so, because the application referred to it as
More.
two single-family residences.
Well, I guess it's just a difference in what
There you
you would
go.
call it, but I believe that this cottage
got it?
has
I'm
heat.
just clarifying. So,
I believe it has heat, so I would say that, it's accessory. On the CO, it calls it an accessory building.
okay, well, I'm not telling you what you need to, what it is, because I don't know what it is. That's why I was asking if there's a current CO. No, so you're gonna have to tell us whether you claim that it's a second principal dwelling, or whether you claim that it's a, what I call an accessory guest cottage. In other words, it can only be used by guests of the occupants of the main building. It can't be, it's not a separate rental dwelling. I'm not suggesting what it is or isn't, but we need to know.
We'll address that in an
And
update.
sometimes we impose conditions if it is two principal dwellings, sometimes we impose conditions to limit it to guests rather than independent. All those are issues that could come up during the course of the application, but we first need to know where you're coming from.
Okay, we'll address that when we update and provide the updated CO.
I have a question for you, Rick. Is there setbacks from the requirements from the right-of-way? Because, I mean, this is right up against the right-of-way.
The house, well,
Yeah,
Right up against what right away?
there's a right-of-way going from the front of the property to the back of the property.
Oh,
south side.
okay, I hadn't seen the survey until I'm looking at it now.
I wonder where that goes to.
Okay, you're gonna have to give us some information about that right away.
I'm at a loss. Can I see the survey? I don't know what right of way.
Okay, Dan's referring to this 25-foot right-of-way that's,
Our proposal is on the other side of the right of way. Right, on the opposite side, on the north side, northwest side of the property.
Isn't this your new proposed two-story structure?
That's not, we are here tonight only to ask to move the cottage. That's it. We're not asking for any relief on the main structure, just on the cottage.
Well, what's gonna happen with the main structure?
Well, the main structure will be built conforming to zoning. If indeed we're before the ARB for a demolition permit that we're looking for.
okay, in answer to your question, Dan, it depends on what the right-of-way is. If it's,
It's just that I don't like to, do a cottage as a whole package here, you know?
oh, yeah, you have a right to ask for that information. If that right-of-way is a private road, then this is a corner lot. If that right-of-way is purely a driveway easement, then it's not a right-of-way. But that, remember, we had the same question come up on the,
First Neck Lane.
a couple of months ago on the,
Yeah.
and we told the applicant he needed to give us some history about the right-of-way,
Right, we'll provide that also.
so that we could determine whether it's a private road or whether it's simply a driveway easement. I can't answer the question without knowing, the term right-of-way by itself is a meaningless term,
Let's just see the document.
and surveyors sometimes utilize it, they don't even know. If you remember in our case, that other case, the surveyor didn't know whether it was a private road or,
Plus, he's asking just for a cottage, but who knows if some of this might crop up as a future variance. Once you get in, you know, it's sort of like a
Oh, yeah.
little bit piecemeal, it seems to me.
they're showing other proposed things that,
But he says they're not
that would
before.
need a variance if this is a private road, so you have the right to ask that question.
We'll get that information.
That was my main question, so.
That's all I have for the moment.
Okay, Rob, you ready?
No.
Anybody out in the audience wish to be heard to this application? So we're gonna adjourn this real courtesy, right?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting of the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals is closed.